Hello, welcome to Men's TV. I'm Glenn Poole of the Australian Men's Health Forum, and you're tuning in to Blokes Healthy Lunchbox, a program we've got on at 12 noon every day, right throughout this Men's Health Week. On today's program, we're focusing on exercise and men's health. It's not rocket science. We all know that exercise is one of those things that keeps us healthy, but how do you actually find time to fit it into your busy life and find a form of exercise that really works for you? Well, we've got three blokes who seem to have got on top of that puzzle. We've got Michael Murphy, Beyond the Barbell, who focuses on weight training and physical exercise. We'll be talking about the connection between physical exercise and mental well-being. We've got Bennallack of Cycle Well, and you'll guess that his thing is getting blokes cycling. And then later in the program, we've got Leroy, who's a dad who's getting dads right across the Sunshine Coast and right across social media fit and active, probably combating that thing that we now know is called the dad bod, something that I'm still working on, even though my kids are in their 20s. Anyway, that's enough about me. I'm going to go straight now to our first guest, who's Michael Murphy from Beyond the Barbell. Michael, thanks for being here.
No worries. Thanks for having me, Glenn. I guess a little bit of background on myself. I am the founder of Beyond the Barbell. So we are a group that encourages men to basically get together, and we use gym and working out as a means of getting us together. I kind of saw that there was, men's health, especially men's mental health. There was a misconnection between, well, not, I guess, misconnection, but, the benefits of working out in the research just showed there were so many benefits to working out mental health and health and men's health in general. So we kind of created this group where the premise came from Men's Shed. I guess, I was looking for a place like Men's Shed myself, but I'm terrible with my hands. I can't build anything. So I thought, well, what am I good at? Well, I'm good at the gym. So it's been a great success so far. We run weekly workouts where all the guys get together. It's kind of like a safe space for guys to come, non-judgmental, and we just kind of write a workout. And within that workout, we try to get guys to open up about their emotions, be vulnerable. Some of our sessions will have guys share their mental health stories. Other times it'll just be, talking about the footy. I'm from Melbourne, so, we're all excited at the moment to have footy back. We also run events that we bring guest speakers in that's had lived experience with mental health and kind of share their journey. So we had a basketballer, Chris Anstey. We've had a footy player, Tom Downey. We also get experts in the field of mental health to kind of come along and help with these events. So, we're pretty young, I guess, in the men's health space. But yeah, some of the things we're doing, we're pretty excited about. Some new initiatives during COVID where we were running online gym sessions. We opened up online personal training because we kind of saw some of the barriers to people exercising was the money and the time. So we opened up online personal training where you get a program. So that's probably enough about Beyond the Barbell. I could talk about it for the full hour, but and I guess just a little bit about me. I've been in the fitness industry for over 10 years. I've done everything in the fitness industry. I ran my own business, worked at gyms, private. Towards the end, I kind of moved away into strength and conditioning. So I've worked with Olympic athletes, I've worked with AFL clubs, but kind of now drawing back into working in the mental health space because I just find it so satisfying. So I guess bringing it back to exercise and physical activity and men's health, we're kind of finding a lot at the moment that, especially in the mental health space, people aren't working out, and it's linked to so many diseases. The two main ones being cardiovascular disease, which is high blood pressure, stroke, heart attack, and the other one's metabolic disease, which is like your diabetes. So all the research out there shows that there's a direct link from not being physically active and having these diseases. Some crazy stats around it that approximately 9% of premature deaths are linked to not being active, which is crazy, especially when, it's easy for me to say, but, when being physically active is something very simple that you can do. They found that having a mental illness actually increases that percentage of premature deaths. And that's just because, people with mental health aren't motivated to do things. So they're more likely to kind of put on the weight, be less active. But it's kind of a full circle because 12% of cases of depression have lowered by just doing physical activity. So these stats are crazy that just doing a little bit of physical activity, we can, we can reduce the rate of cardiovascular disease, depression, and metabolic disease, which are probably the three main ones we focus on at Beyond the Barbell. So when I say physical activity can be anything. It doesn't necessarily, I know our premise is around the gym and getting in the gym and lifting weights. But like physical activity can be anything. So going for a walk, I like to call these incidental physical activities, like doing the gardening, doing the housework. I don't know about you guys, but I know when I get out in the garden, like I'm out there for a couple of hours, I'm sweating. Sometimes, I feel like I've had more of a workout just doing that than I would if I, had planned something to go to the gym and to do. So at Beyond the Barbell, there's three benefits we look at for physical activity. The first one being like the physical benefits, which I've kind of touched on. So the reduced heart disease is the main one. Reduced metabolic disease, so your type 1, type 2 diabetes. Research has shown that we can actually, if you do have type 2 diabetes, you can actually reduce it by physical activity and diet. The physiological benefits are also like increased muscle size, which helps. I'm trying not to get too scientific here, but helps with your basal metabolic rate. So the way that you burn energy. So I guess the bigger the muscle you have, the more energy you burn. So I like to kind of use for you car people out there, the bigger motor you have in the car, the more petrol it uses. And that's the same with your muscles. The bigger the muscle, the more petrol, the more energy it needs. So doing exercise will help with that. Helps decrease the fat, especially for men around that belly area, which is vital that we reduce that, because if you think about all our important inside stuff, our organs, our hearts, our lungs, it's all in that stomach area. And if it's just covered in fat, it puts us at a higher risk at disease. So those are the kind of physiological benefits that we try to push at Beyond the Barbell. The psychological benefits come with exercise. So as I said, research shows that there's a decrease in depression and anxiety with exercise. And there's a multitude of reasons why that is. The biggest one out there is the release of endorphins, the feel-good hormone that we get when we exercise, the same kind of hormone that releases when we have something sweet that's sugary that makes us feel good. The same. It is the same kind of hormone that's released after sex that makes us feel good. So we can actually still get those benefits from just exercising. It decreases our stress. It's a bit of a stress outlet for us. It helps increase our self-esteem. Gives us better sleep, which is super important. It actually has shown that it helps improve your memory. For me, it gives me just a mental break of your busy day. My 60 minutes in the gym, it's just me in the gym. It gives me a mental break. I'm just focusing on what I'm doing. And the other one is a sense of achievement. So at Beyond the Barbell, like as I kind of stated, we do a lot of weightlifting, a lot of lifting things. There's this huge sense of achievement when you hit a personal record or You get a really good time. That kind of feeling that you get, it's fantastic. It just helps psychologically, and it also helps outside of the gym. That kind of, I can achieve things. It's gives you that really good, that sense of feeling. And one we're massive at beyond the barbell, and it's probably kind of where it all started, was the social benefits. It's besides it helps with motivation, knowing that there's 20 other blokes at the gym waiting for you to do the class. These days we don't have, especially at the moment with COVID, thank God the restrictions are lifting, we don't have that connectivity with other people. Our connectivity is through social media, through online forums and stuff like that, and it's just not the same as kind of being together. So we're really big on that social connection, and I guess that's why, like, at our sessions, the exercise is important, but the chat beforehand, the chat afterwards, the chat in between sets is big. I actually did a bit of research on this for a thesis, and I looked at CrossFit and why people do CrossFit for, and we thought that we were going to find that it was because people want to get fit, want to get strong, but it was actually the connections that they made. It was the friendships they made. It wasn't so much the CrossFit. There was a few people that hated CrossFit, but it was the friends that they made doing it that they didn't want to miss out. It was a bit of a FOMO, fear of missing out of what their friends were doing. So that kind of new friendships that you get through the gym. I know I just got married recently, and we had a portion of the guys at the gym that were, or portion of the guys at the wedding that were all from the gym that I met through the gym. So, but it also gives you that sense of community that a lot of us don't have now. There's a lot of, again, research. I keep going back to research because that's my background, to say that we don't have that sense of community anymore. So through going to the gym and doing these classes, it kind of brings that sense of community back. And another main one is it kind of alleviates loneliness. Again, kind of going to the gym, having your friends to hang out with is super important. So those are probably three main benefits that we look at: physical, psychological, and social benefits for joining up at the gym and doing stuff. So it's pretty tricky with the gym, especially if you haven't been before. I'm lucky. I grew up, as soon as I was 18, I was in the gym. It was probably more the aesthetics that I wanted when I was 18. I wanted to look good. But since then, it's kind of always been entrenched in my life. I need to go to the gym everywhere. Since I was 18, I've had a gym membership. So I'm 35 now, so it's 17 years now that to think how much money I've wasted on the gym. Sorry, I shouldn't say wasted, because I love it. So for me, it's easy, but a lot of the people I come into contact with, it's really hard, and I can appreciate how hard it is, because we are almost set up to fail to start at the gym. Because we kind of go onto social media and we see these before and after shots, and we say that's what we want to do. But what we don't see is that hard work that happens in between the before and after shots. It's not just 3 months and now they're shredded. Marketing doesn't help, especially these healthy foods. There's you go to the frozen food section, you see healthy choice, and you're like, well, I'm going to get that, but it's just full of sugar. It's full of preservatives. Low fat, low sugar, all these kind of marketing tools that these healthy foods use, they're not tricking us, but there's still, if it's low in fat, it's usually high in sugar. If it's low in sugar, it's usually high in fat to get the taste. Social media, I know I go onto social media and I see photos of guys that are shredded and excuse me, huge and muscly. But a lot of these are photoshopped. A lot of these have direct lighting, and that really, really helps. I remember watching this documentary where they actually did the before and after shot in the same day. And they just got the guy to, he was pasty white, took his shirt off, he had to push his belly out, he kind of was looking miserable. And then the second one, they just spray tanned him, got him smiling. He had to puff his chest out, and it was the same day. But it looked like two different people. So social media doesn't help. Excuse me. And the other one's elite athletes. People kind of look at elite athletes and say, oh, how fit are they? How strong are they? But these guys are paid to do it. You know, it's ingrained in their life to do it. So I do feel that men are set up to kind of fail when it comes to exercise, but we found there's a couple little things that we can do to kind of alleviate that. The first one is it's a process. Yeah, remember it's a process. So try to avoid this all or nothing. Many times I heard people say, I'm going to start on Monday. Yeah, come Monday, I'm going to start. I'm going to go to the gym. I'm going to do a run in the morning, gym at night. Tuesday, I'm going to do this, and this all or nothing. And then it kind of, again, it's kind of setting you up to fail because life gets in the way. And you might miss a session. And then usually you miss a session, you go, well, I've missed a session. It doesn't matter if I miss the next one. And then it kind of just avalanche of, missing sessions and then kind of just getting back to your baseline. It's the same with your nutrition. Come Monday, I'm going to stop drinking. I'm going to stop eating sugar. I'm going to stop doing this. And come Monday, and it's just really hard to do that. So we've run programs in the past, challenges in the past where we, week one, it's you stop alcohol. You can do whatever else you want. You're just not going to have alcohol. That's all it is. And then week two is you're not going to have bread. You can have anything else, but after week two, you can't have alcohol and bread. Those are the two things. And then week three, it's another thing. Week four, it's another thing. Setting goals is huge. Yeah, and making them SMART goals, so specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time bound. Not just I'm going to go to the gym. That goal's not really going to motivate you. So, ones we kind of use with clients, again, it's being realistic. So I'm going to go for a walk 3 times this week for 30 minutes. Yeah, so we've got the week, it's a time bound, it's just 30 minutes, and we're going to do it 3 times. We spend a lot of time on the barriers. So work being a big barrier at the moment, I guess, depending on how you look at it, COVID's probably really helped. People working at home's giving us a little bit more time to focus on it. But, how can we get exercise in around work? Family, time, money. So again, we try to come up with solutions for these things. Getting help is a big thing. If you're going to buy a car, I have no idea about cars. I'm going to get help. I'm going to get people to look over it. I'm going to do my research. I'm going to do all of that. So I'm going to get help. So it's the same with kind of exercise and training. If you don't know much about it, try to find help. Personal trainer. There's so many online forums, group classes where they have coaches is fantastic. And as I said, do your research. If you were to buy a car, you wouldn't kind of just go in and go, I'm going to take that one. You spend hours researching it. You read reviews, you go test driving. So why shouldn't your body be any different? It's a vehicle that you're in for your whole life. So before you go out and start doing all this exercise, finding new ways to do it, do your research, find what's going to work for you. You want to pick things that you're going to continue to do. If you hate running, don't decide that you're going to do a marathon because you know that you'll start off well, and then you'll kind of slow down. I know I'm running out of time, Glenn. I'm almost there. So I guess going back, this is the last little bit of advice I'll give you guys, is just start slow. They say that as small as 30 to 60 minutes of walking, running, cycling a day, 3 days a week is enough. That's an hour and a half minimum of work that you can do. Going to the gym, doing 60 minutes at least 3 times a week of resistance training, that's going to, research has shown it's going to bring down disease. So yeah, just start small. Even if it's just going for a walk, doing stuff around the house. I'm sure Glenn will post you guys towards my website, but I've got videos on, simple things that during the air breaks of your TV show, you just get up and do squats or push-ups or star jumps. It's just the little things, they build up.
Yeah.
So I'll probably leave it there, Glenn, because I think I'm over time, but yeah, please, if you guys want to find out more about us, we're at beyondthebarbell.org.au. I'm sure Glenn will post the link. We're pretty active on socials. Today is Workout Wednesday, so on our socials, we'll release a workout that you can do. There's all workouts you can do at home. We are on Facebook as well, and I'm sure he'll post all the links. But if you want any advice, please reach out. I'm pretty good at getting back to emails. That's my OCD. I hate having unread emails in my account. So, but yeah, thanks for listening, guys. If you've got questions, please let me know.
Great, thanks, Michael. There was a quick question in the comments box there. Where is this gym? Asked Nick.
Oh, sorry, I didn't say. We are based in Melbourne. We're out of a gym called Northside Fitness, which is in Fairfield. It's in the north, obviously. So yeah, the guys at Northside Fitness have been fantastic helping us run. It's not my gym. They let us use it for free. It's a fantastic gym. I can't wait for next Monday in Melbourne that we get to go back and actually lift some weights. But yeah, in Melbourne, Fairfield, Northside Fitness, Nick,
right.
If you're in Victoria.
And of course, it doesn't matter where you are in the country or indeed the world, we can engage with what you're doing online.
Definitely. Free workouts for everyone.
Great stuff. That was awesome, Michael. Great work you're doing. I do still feel slightly embarrassed about the lack of exercise I do. But one thing that really resonated is that, start with the small steps. I'm 50 now, and it took me till I was about 35 to give up trying to be as fit as I was when I was 15. Yeah. And I had the same pattern every January, New Year's resolution. This is the year. This is the year I can still make it into the Olympics. This is the year. Yeah. And I'd go out and I'd run 10K across country, and then my body would just really react. I'd swell up, I'd be aching, and I'd go, that's it, I can't do it. And then one year, I don't know what it was that changed, but one year I set myself a goal, what I thought was an impossible goal of doing a marathon. But I thought if I can do half a K, I can then do 1K and then one half a K. And I just started really slow and really small distances. And I built up bit by bit, and I had to give up trying to beat the 15-year-old and actually or even beat the old bloke or the overweight woman who was running around the park faster than I was, and actually just compete against myself. And can I be a bit better than I was yesterday, or do a bit better than I did last week? And I ran my first marathon in my 30s, then gave up again for about 10 years. And then last year, I did after Men's Health Week last year, actually, I was feeling really unfit. I started training and did my first marathon in 10 years. I thought, I'm going to do a marathon every year in my 50s, and I'm going to see if I can keep slightly improving on my personal best every year through my 50s. So I've done it once. Ask me in 10 years when I get to 60.
You go. Yeah, but I think you're right. Just the small little steps, getting through and being realistic about it. Those programs, Couch to 5Ks, are really good at showing you that it's not go out and run 5Ks. It's you start small. So yeah, really good point.
Good. All right, thanks, Michael. We'll move on to Ash now. I'm sure I'm one of his target audience because I can definitely qualify as a middle-aged man in lycra, a mammal.
Excellent, good stuff.
Yeah, I know that's one of the groups that you go for.
It's the group. Yep.
I'll leave you to tell us your story and what you're all about.
Thanks, Glenn. Thanks, Michael, too. Hello, everyone. I'm Ash Bennallack. I'm the founder of Cycle Well. I'll step across here. That's a little selection of some of the guys who did our Jindabyne camp. And from that picture, I think you will probably see that what we're about is we're a health, well-being and cycling camp. So we're for just your normal, everyday guy. As Glenn said, a mammal. I'm one. All the guys there behind you are. And we're really about combining our physical interests and a fitness and health interest of cycling, which is huge for that demographic around your sort of 40s plus. I've got a background in marketing, so used to talking in demographics and research and that sort of stuff, as Michael was. So apologies if I start sounding a little bit too sort of wanky with the marketing speak there. But basically, how CycleWell came about, I've been very interested in. I had a relatively similar path to Michael at the start of my journey. I was a PT. I did a uni degree, and at the same time I did a PT degree. PT course back in the day when you used to have to go for 12 months at the local TAFE. Got through there. My big goal there was, that was what, 1997. I thought I was going to open a big chain of gyms and, you know, take the world by storm and be a millionaire and go around and have my own jet and, you know, take on the Gold's Gym franchise and all that sort of stuff. But then, as Michael said, sort of life got in the way a little bit. I had people telling me that, you know, gyms weren't the right thing and gyms weren't going to be this and gyms weren't going to be that. So I lived the life that I was sort of told to live and focused on marketing. Always had a personal interest in health and got very big into bodybuilding and all sorts of stuff along the journey. But if we fast forward sort of to now, I got into cycling. I moved from Melbourne, the city, back to my hometown of Bendigo, and in a regional area, we do get a hell of a lot more time to ourselves to be able to focus on doing stuff that we like rather than just getting in the hustle and bustle of, you know, the daily grind. And I started cycling and realised pretty quickly that it's very male focused still. And again, the stats show that as well. There's a huge over-representation, if you like, of middle-aged guys, hence why the mammal term has come about. And I sort of started thinking with my marketing researchy type hat on, what is this about? Why are guys being drawn to that? If you look at that and then you look at culture and societies in Australia, men, when we get to sort of our mid-20s, if we settle down then, which is fairly typical, we're sort of taught, get yourself a good job, pay the bills, focus on your career, focus on your family, and we lose a lot of that social connection that we used to have playing competitive sport or going down to the pub, you know, those sorts of things. A lot of guys don't do that anymore because it's so not as well sort of taken socially. So guys tend to have this sort of, these lost years between their late 20s, early 30s through to, you know, 40s, early 50s, when, you know, the kids have left home or the kids are about to leave home, or they have a relationship breakdown or separation or something like that. And then they tend to gravitate towards cycling, because it gives us that sense of community, that sense of purpose. It gives us something sort of bigger than ourselves to belong to. And it also has those added benefits of, if you do it right and you don't have too many coffees and too much beer and too many other nice things after your ride, you can lose weight as well. So it's sort of like a bonus. You get to belong to something and you get some spiritual, physical, mental, all the good stuff that we sort of lose in that abyss of those years where we just head down on the grind. So CycleWell, which is cyclewell, one word, .com.au, check us out. It's a deliberate play on cycling and wellness. 5 years ago, when I decided to see if I could do something in this space full time as what I wanted to do, I went and looked around and did, there's a postgrad course at RMIT in Melbourne, which is in wellness. And that gives you some really good foundational academic learnings around the whole wellbeing space, positive psychology, Eastern cultural stuff, all sorts of different wellness things. And at the same time, there was an opportunity at my employer to get trained to become a resilience trainer. So we had professional resilience trainers who specialised in teaching resilience skills to the US soldiers to help them reduce incidences of PTSD. And it was all very much based around positive psychology, particularly Martin Seligman's work around values and character strengths. And I was lucky enough to be chosen to be a trainer there. So sitting and sort of taking all that in, I realised that the health and wellbeing space very much in Australia is still very much sort of female focused. It's very flowery, it's very pastel, it's very, we'll burn some incense and we'll sit down and we'll look in each other's eyes and we'll have a chat about it and talk about our feelings and all the stuff that guys, we can do, but we're trained from the time that we're little in our society to not do that. So trying to help guys with the current well-being and wellness options out there is very limited because they're not designed for guys. So another thing, I then thought, well, I think one of the reasons why guys like riding is because we get to feel like we're part of something, but generally you're sitting side by side, so you're shoulder to shoulder, you're not directly face on, so you don't have to do the looking into each other's eyes and that whole deep stuff, but you can still talk and you can still talk about stuff that you need to get off your chest. So I kind of thought, if I could find a way to combine what I already know middle-aged men are doing and love, and find almost a secret little way to wedge in some health and wellbeing training to teach them some skills, and then take them away on that classic boys trip, that could be a model that I could use to try and actually do something that was preventative in the mental health space that actually works. So you'll know, lots of people will know the stats have been out that 2 out of 3 suicides in Australia are men. And I think the second highest category for that is 45 to 54. I think the only category that's worse is the old guys. So clearly what society is doing with the way we treat boys and men is not quite right. So being very much action focused, I didn't just want to be another awareness organisation, because there's plenty of awareness organisations out there. I wanted to be like a preventative doing organisation. So I know at the moment we're only taking sort of 20 guys away at a time, but we give them professional coaching and leadership and health and nutrition and wellbeing and psychology and mental health and all the cool stuff we give them on a camp where they can also ride their bike. So that's what Cycle Well does in a nutshell. One of the things I guess we start with on day one of our camp is we go through, as I mentioned, the Martin Seligman Values in Action, so the VIA. If anybody hasn't heard of Martin Seligman, have a look at his TED Talk. Just look up VIA on TED Talks. He's like the godfather of positive psychology. And basically, he's a career academic who has discovered 24 core character strengths that pretty much any human being has. So if you're a human, regardless of your culture, regardless of what country you live in, where you are, there are pretty much 24 character strengths or values that come through with most humans. And if you choose your top 5 of those and you try to live your life in alignment with those top 5 character strengths, you'll get more positivity from your life. You'll feel better. You'll have better results, because it's that classic, people tell you all the time, be in alignment. What does that actually mean? Have a look at the VIA and that will help you. A lot of the work that we do in our camps is based around that positive psychology background. Once we do that, we quite often have, there's about 4 different types of people who will come to our camps. One will be the middle-aged guy whose kids are getting a little bit older or have left home, and they're now doing that whole, okay, well, who am I now? Like, I've done the whole caregiver provider thing. Now I'm late 40s, early 50s. Who am I now? What am I going to do? I've found cycling. Cycling's cool, so they can get to see our messaging because I can get to them via cycling. But they're asking that classic question of, well, what's next for me? The other guys we get a lot of are the ones who have unfortunately gone through the relationship breakdown, the separation. So they're in the case of, okay, I need to lose some weight. I need to get better looking because I want to get another partner. I want to get sex again. I want all that cool stuff. But I've got no idea what to do. Again, I've been head down, bum up, doing what people have told me to do. What do I do next? And then we'll also get a lot of guys towards the sort of mid to late 50s who've been to the GP, which is a great thing. And the GP said, you need to lose weight. So for a lot of the reasons why that Michael discussed, your blood pressure is too high, you need to lose weight, you've got a family history, you're pre-diabetic, all that stuff. So again, they sit there and say, okay, well, I ride once or twice a week. I like that, but I really don't know what else I could do to get fit and healthy. And so those guys will come to our camp as well. And what we generally start off with is rather than focusing on what they need to do less of and making it a negative thing, we focus on what they can really do more of. So you can drink more, which better hydration helps your blood pressure. It'll help you feel fuller. It'll help you lose weight. It'll help you work better. Helps your muscles work better. All those sorts of things. You can sleep more, so you can focus on your sleep routine. And if you can't get your sleep routine down right, then you need to go and work on that. Because as Michael was saying, sleep. If you've got a bad sleep routine, it raises your cortisol levels. It makes people who have bad sleep are more overweight. They get diabetes more. All those sorts of things are issues with sleep. So we focus on that. We get them to move more. And again, you don't have to ride around the bay in a day. You don't have to go and ride 200 Ks a day or ride up mountains. If you're riding 20 Ks this week, then maybe next week you can ride 30 Ks. Maybe the week after you can ride 40 Ks. So it's all that. It's just little bits, making sure that what you do to focus on what you can do more of. Sometimes it's just that little switch of, well, instead of thinking about all the things you can't do anymore, which makes it a bad experience, let's think about the things you can do more of. And then the other one, which can sometimes raise some eyebrows, is we pretty much just say, just do more of what you love. Whatever you like to do, whatever you used to like to do that made you feel good, that you don't do anymore, start doing some of that stuff. So that could be playing with Lego, it could be walking in the bush, it could be tinkering with cars, it could be all sorts of things that guys don't do. And that stops us from getting that hormone rush and the benefits that you get of positive emotion. And positive emotion builds on itself. So the more positive emotions that you can plan into your daily life, hopefully riding is one of those, and the coffee afterwards is one of those. But if you can start to add in extra positive emotions in your life, it keeps you motivated, it keeps you up and about, and it actually changes the way that you see things. And the other one that we also say, which is very common around positive psychology literature, is just be grateful. You know, we live in like probably the luckiest country in the world. You are probably, if you're at a Cycle Well camp, you're probably sitting on a bike that cost you anywhere from $3,000 to $15,000 or more. So the fact that you can afford a bike like that, the fact that you can afford to come away and spend time having access to, you know, quality coaches and meeting guys who've got life experience and stuff is something that you can be grateful for. And I think the culture, and again, I'm probably a little bit to blame with what I've done in my marketing career. So my marketing career, 25 years, has been convincing people to buy stuff they don't need with money they don't have to impress people who don't give a shit. So I'm an expert at doing that. I've been doing that for 20 years. And what that does is that stops us from being grateful, and it takes away the positive emotions and just the gratefulness, because you're always chasing the next shiny thing. So our camps are very much around that sort of stuff to start off with. And I think anyone who's watching this, who's maybe in that 40-plus-year-old sort of transitioning from the dad bod into the what's next type thing, you don't have to go and join a gym straight away if you don't want to. Do this sort of stuff, drink more, sleep more, move more, do more of what you love, and just be grateful for what you've got. And then I would say, one last thing, again, social media, just stay away from it. Don't get your advice from social media. Go to people like Michael, get yourself a good PT. Go and get someone who looks like a PT, and clearly Leroy and Michael look like PTs. You'll see Leroy in a minute. So get someone who actually isn't just that Instagram superstar who talks the rubbish and talks the talk and photoshops all their pictures to look the go. Go to someone who actually knows what they're talking about.
Great.
And that would be my last bit of advice.
Thanks, Ash. And of course, when you say don't pay attention to social media, that's unless you're listening to Blokes Healthy Lunchbox on Men's Health TV.
That's totally right, exactly. Unless you're watching now, whatever you're watching, whatever channels you're on at the moment, stick with them. That's it. That's one.
And where can people go to get more information about the great work you're doing, Ash?
Cyclewell.com.au, and we're also on Facebook and a little bit of Insta every now and then, but we were talking about Insta beforehand. I'm not a huge fan of Insta, not a huge fan of the pictures, so if you want to know what we're doing, go to our website or go to Facebook.
It's a younger man's game.
Yeah, it's not us.
I think Michael's out there on Insta but that's entirely appropriate.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be. I don't know. Haven't met Leroy before, but I wouldn't be surprised if he's with the Insta generation too.
Yeah.
I'm certainly with you in the transitioning. Well, I've transitioned from
Yeah.
dad bod to whatever's in between dad bod and granddad bod. That's where I am right now.
Well, you need to come to a camp then, and we'll teach you how to ride your bike and be grateful and stuff.
Thank you for that. I mean, I love the Martin Seligman stuff.
It's good.
That really sticks out for me. I always remember this from Martin Seligman. 3 types of life you can lead. If you want to lead a positive, a life using positive psychology, a good life, a pleasant life, and a meaningful life. Like good life, do stuff you're good at, because that gives you that improves your well-being. Do stuff that pleases you, the pleasant life, because that improves your well-being, and the ultimate goal, that meaningful life of being able to do stuff which brings you meaning and purpose. And I'm very blessed to do work in this field, which absolutely isn't just a job for me. It's an absolute purpose. Spreading the word about men's health and well-being, and promoting individuals and organizations that are doing great stuff to improve the lives and health of men and boys like you 3 great men are. So we come to our third and final guest on today's episode of the Blokes Healthy Lunchbox. It's Leroy from the Sunshine Coast, and he's got a great network and a great business called Fit Dad Lifestyle. And when you see him, I'm sure you'll get who the Fit Dad is. So Leroy, let's just see if we've got you on. How's your microphone? How are you, Leroy?
Yeah, good, thanks. And yourself?
Yeah, really great. Thanks for being here.
Not a drummer, mate. Not a drummer at all.
So do you want to just start, Leroy, by telling us a bit about who you are and what your sort of story is?
Yeah, so name's Leroy. I was in the army for 6 years, and then post that, I ended up moving up to Noosa, where my wife was from, and I started up a company called Boot Camp Noosa. So I ran that for about 6 years before selling that company a couple of years ago. In that time, I also ran fitness holidays around the world. So we did like Thailand, Bali, Everest Base Camp, and just stuff here in Australia as well. And then I went back overseas and did a bit of contracting. And it was during that time that I started up the Fit Dad Lifestyle. So obviously our kids were always embedded into, the gyms that we owned and the facilities that we had. And, the kids were always down there sort of imitating what we were doing and playing around with different things. And it was a real passion, and, seeing their love and I guess involvement to, really tackle that niche and be able to, take it forward and turn it into, not only community, but now also a company as well.
Great. And so we know, how old are your kids now?
6 and 3. So,
okay.
Yeah.
And how did you personally find the transition from being a single man, or a man in a relationship where there's just the two of you, to being a dad?
Pretty tough, to tell you the truth. I've got an amazing wife who, took motherhood, like it was, she'd done it before, sort of thing. So, those initial weeks and, with her sisters already having kids and stuff like that, she'd helped out and, been involved with, newborns and stuff like that. So she really, took it in her stride. And I think having that support and having, that interaction and, learning, sort of as you go, because, I didn't do any of those birthing classes or anything like that. I was, too cool for all that sort of stuff at the time. And, it was sort of just a learning curve. And, as with everything, you sort of get that experience, and then every day you can, tick that box and move on to the next, thing. And even to this day, 6 and 3 years old, I'm still learning things about fatherhood every day and different challenges as they get older. So
now, in recent years, we've all come very familiar with the term the dad bod.
Yep.
I think dad bods existed for many decades, but they didn't have a word.
Yeah.
I'm finding it really tough to imagine that you yourself suffer from dad bod. But did that period have an impact on your sort of ability to stay fit and healthy?
The dad bod word is quite a buzzword at the moment. It like yourself, a couple of years ago, I don't even know if it existed. I think it's sort of just in those recent times. But I'm just like every other father out there. Like, I keep fit, I train every day, but then I also love to go have some beers with the boys, or, go for a hit of golf, or, have a pizza on the weekend with the kids or something like that. So, my weight fluctuates as well. I'm not always, comfortable sharing my stuff online. Like, well, I care a lot less now than what I probably did 2 or 3 years ago. But, I think it was, just coming to terms with accepting that this is who I am, and, trying to be a lot real with the community that we've built across all the social media platforms, and not trying to be that, like you spoke about previously, that Instagram model and that, person online trying to, always look picture perfect and stuff like that, and actually being able to respond to fathers, in real terms. And even now, like coming out of quarantine, we trained every day, but the training has been impacted by, what equipment we had available in the shed. And, I had recent knee surgery a couple of weeks ago as well. So that's impacted this. And, my addiction for chocolate as well hasn't helped the whole situation. So, mate, it's definitely, one of those things that, I struggle with, and I know when I need to dial in the nutrition again and, get back on track for a few weeks. But doing it as a lifestyle choice as well. So not doing it where, I go flat out for 8 weeks and then I settle for 8 weeks, and, living that balanced lifestyle of, 80, 90%, good, and, still enjoying those, outings whenever the time comes, and not stressing about, that beer or that calorie that, I might be having that might ruin the rest of the week.
Great. So why don't you tell us then exactly what Fit Dad lifestyle is?
Yeah, so the Fit Dad lifestyle, first and foremost, was a community. So for the last couple of years, we've been building a community of fathers worldwide, and really trying to inspire, motivate, encourage them to live that active lifestyle and become a better example for their children than what they already are. And, really instilling onto them that it is part of the journey. It's not an 8-week quick fix, Instagram 8-week challenge where someone's used a before and after photo that was actually 20 weeks long and they're just selling it as a 4-week shred or something like that. And realizing that, doing something that you can do not only, now, but also for the next 10 years and potentially alongside your kids as well. And, being able to find that activity that you like, and, not going to your local, group fitness class or local gym just because you feel that that's what you have to do, to get those results in the short term. So, if that's snowboarding, if that's, skiing, if that's, bike riding, or, whatever the case may be, actually find something you enjoy, because over the course of 10 years, you're going to get more results out of something that you actually enjoy doing than something that you're just feeling like you have to force yourself into.
Yeah, and it looks like seeing what you're up to, I'm just actually stumbling a bit here because I'm getting over the shock of the revelation that all those 8-week before and after pictures aren't true. I never realized that.
Yeah. Oh, mate. It's when you've been around the industry for a while, you start to see things, and you start to see the same photos filter through. And this week's promotion is a 4-week shred with the same photos. And then, 2 months later, it's a, I don't know, 8-week shred with the same photos. And yeah, so those dates and those weight losses have changed multiple times on multiple pictures. So it's sort of funny to see those different organizations use those pictures. So.
Right. So what's is the average dad you're working with? Are they new dads? Or are they working dads? How would you sort of classify the average guy? Your typical fit dad client that you work with.
Yeah, so typically the dads have got kids. I would guess under 10 would be probably the range that majority of the fathers in. We try to instill a lot of different activities that you can do with the kids, and even some workouts that you can do with them. But most of the stuff we do, it looks good on camera and all that kind of stuff. But ultimately, it's just fun. Like, we never recommend doing it with reps or going for time. Like, just do it for the fun of it. If your kid gets sick of it, or your kid might be too heavy, once they obviously get older, get them joining in next year. It doesn't necessarily always have to be with them. So, the ideal sort of father that comes to us is, someone who has been in the, has done gym before, or has done group fitness, or potentially even had, that military background and, been instilled in that sort of physical space before, but has lost track and, let life get in the way once they've had kids and lost sight of, their own goals and ambition. So our main mission is to, instill that confidence back in not only the fathers, but allow them to, get active and look at it at the bigger picture over the, the coming 10 years, and be able to keep up with the kids, because as we all know, the kids obviously get stronger and faster as they grow up. And me personally, and I'm sure a lot of other fathers out there listening, you never want to let the kids win anything, so it's got to always stay in front of them and make sure that we're able to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Being a competitive dad is an essential part of fatherhood. Teaching your kids how to compete and how to lose as well, actually.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So we've got there's some really interesting. It kind of makes sense, this, but the science of it is really becoming very solid. That fathers have a massive impact on the health and well-being of their children.
Yeah.
Independent of the mother, and a part of it is about role modeling. It's about actually growing up with a dad who values health and well-being, exercise, good eating, makes it more likely that you will, as a child, will grow up, and particularly with boys. So when you're helping a dad stay fit, you're not just helping one individual, you're actually improving the health and well-being of the family.
Yeah, 100%, and generations to come. Like we all know, and this is very apparent with dealing with all the different dads. Yeah, we do, and a lot of things that we find are the kids imitate what the parents are doing 9 times out of 10. If you tell the kids to go tidy the room, they're not going to do it. And my kids haven't done it all day today. But if I go out there and start packing up and say, "Come give Dad a hand," they're going to come straight away and start doing it. And even during isolation, one of the biggest things that we found is the amount of positive feedback dads have told us, about being able to just go into the shed and do some push-ups or squats or just some basic, movements, and have their kids out there and have that extra bit of bonding time with them. And you don't have to be bonding about many things, but the actual fitness side of things allows them to have that laughter and have that connection and have those meaningful minutes in a time that you'd typically be away at the gym or be at another facility somewhere doing that same routine. And I think it's really allowed parents and fathers in general to be able to get a bond on a different level. And my biggest hope is that when things go back to normal, that the bond that these parents have connected with their children during these downtimes, they don't lose that extra time that they've been able to gain.
Yeah, it's a massive part of men's health. Is there's two aspects of men's health we talk about a lot, which people don't understand, is about health. One is boys' education, because the better you do in school, the better your health will be, generally speaking, later in life. And the other is your experience of fatherhood. And that, the level to which your dad's involved has a massive impact on your health and well-being. So we always promote doing better for boys at school and helping dads be involved in their kids' lives as key aspects of men's health. And it's great to see that you're contributing to that through the Fit Dad lifestyle. I'm just aware that we've got that Michael and Ash have stayed on with us. I wonder if you guys want to jump in and say hi, or have got any questions. I'll come to you first, Michael. We haven't heard from you for about half an hour.
No, I think what the guys have gone through have been fantastic about being realistic about your training and finding something that you love doing. Again, and I mentioned this, for me, working out, lifting weights, doing barbell stuff is something that I love doing. It's that sense of accomplishment. But I can resonate with Ash because I love riding my bike. I'm not quite sure that I'd be able to keep up with him. I feel like I'm a bit of a Clydesdale these days on the bike, but I try to get out for at least 30 minutes a week on my road bike. I think Leroy makes a really great point, doing stuff that you love. Like, exercise, being physical active doesn't have to be in the gym, doesn't have to be running. Like, if it's snowboarding, if it's skiing, if it's cycling, that's all being physical active or physically active. So, find something that you love doing, something that you're out there, gets your heart rate up. That's the main thing. If it gets your heart rate up, mowing the lawn gets my heart rate up. Watching the footy, that gets my heart rate up. Watching the Mighty D's play. Just enjoy it.
Great, thanks, Michael. What about you, Ash?
I think it's been good that we're all sort of singing from the same hymn book here a bit. I think it's I think what we try to do most of the time at our camps, which luckily so far have happened really quickly, is we just try to unpack a lot of the blokey stereotypical bullshit that just doesn't do anyone any good. And you can tell that there's a lot of guys who just don't get it, but they haven't got a modelling of what you can do and like how it can be. So people like Michael and Leroy and hopefully myself and all my team basically saying, when you go for a ride, it is okay to have a chat about your relationship or your feelings or, you're feeling like this or that or whatever. Like, you don't have to talk about the weather and talk about the stock market and all the bullshit that goes on. You can cut straight to the chase and get to the stuff that guys do need to talk about. So I think it's good. However, whatever format you do that in, and I think probably the way we're built is we like to do that in groups and we like to be physically active when we're doing it. So find something that you can do physically active and get out there.
Great, thanks, Ash. So coming back to you, Leroy, one of the things I've noticed, and I know we don't like to compare muscles and be blokes putting it on the table, but I noticed you did have probably the biggest social following, something like 18,000 people on your Facebook. That can't just be dads in Noosa. How far are you reaching?
Yeah, no, our community is worldwide. So we've got 3,000 dads in our Facebook group. So that's probably where we're the most active and engaged. And we've vetted that, very well. So we keep away all the spam and all the crap that goes along with running such a large community. But yeah, the Facebook group, I've always been a follower of that Gary Vee and the whole give sort of thing. So that's what we've basically done over the last 2 years, whether it's our podcast or the app or, this, that, and everything else. We give everything away that we can. And we've just launched a supplement brand, the Fit Dad Fuel. So that's how we're going to obviously, support all that thing. But our mission is to obviously just, continue to provide education, support and, motivation, I guess, to fathers through whether it's fitness programs or, live streams like this and the podcast with, some of the amazing guests we've had from around the world on that as well. And, really give them, that, I guess, chance to build up their own confidence, to take that into their own personal life and, be that better role model and example for their children. That's our main goal. Great.
So you don't have to be in the sunny coast to tune it, to sort of connect with the Fit Dad lifestyle.
No, mate, we're completely online. So we don't actually do anything in person. We are launching across the country, support groups for the Fit Dad lifestyle as well. And also in America across all the capital cities as well over the next year. But COVID's obviously put a damper on that. So once all that settles down, we'll get back into plans and try and do that. And, we've got about 50 different ambassadors from around, the USA and Australia who are willing to take that up and allow fathers to, meet up on the weekends and allow them to do a workout with the kids or have a chat or even go to the footy and, do whatever they need to do. So, a few things in the pipeline, but yeah, as you know, these crazy times have challenged us all and made us pivot and have to figure out what we can do in the meantime.
That's fantastic. And where can people go to, and particularly dads, of course, go to find out more?
Yeah, so across the podcast app, the socials, it's just the Fit Dad Lifestyle. And then the website is just thefitdadlifestyle.com. So if they go there, they can check out everything we're doing, join the community, get involved. It's completely negative free. Anyone has any negativity, I kick them out straight away. No questions asked. So, we've got people in there talking about divorces. We've got people in there talking about, medical issues with their kids and, just having all these fathers from around the world be able to offer that support and advice that potentially have already been through before, that dads don't have to then sit there and stress or worry about, and they can, get some advice and be able to take that on board or, further explore it.
That's fantastic. Thanks for being here, Leroy. I've been really struck. I mean, obviously you three guys are super fit and doing, practicing what you preach in terms of, exercising and getting out there, and also inspiring other blokes to do the same. But I've been really struck how actually you're also dealing with blokes' lives. You're talking about mental health, you're talking about relationships, you're talking about lives, guys living a balanced, healthy, happy life. So thanks to all you do. Do go and check out what these guys are doing. Doesn't matter if you're not local to them, because they've all got an online presence. Michael Murphy of Beyond the Barbell, Ashley Bennallack of Cycle Well, and Leroy from the Fit Dad Lifestyle. This has been the Blokes Healthy Lunchbox. We've been talking exercise and men's health, and we'll be back tomorrow at 12 noon talking nutrition. Thanks, guys. We're going to switch straight now to our next program, but you're free to go, and we'll see you out there in the online space, no doubt.
Thanks, Glenn.
Hi, you're watching Men's Health TV. I'm Glenn Poole, and this is Talking Men's Mental Health. In the next hour, we have two great speakers. We have joining us in a moment, Robert Hart from Zest Learning. And then at around 1:30, we'll have Dave Burt from SALT, Sport and Life Training. Coming up then at 2 p.m, we have Blokes on the Couch with three great guys who are working with men one-to-one through psychology and counseling, talking about the issues that they deal with when working with men. Right now, I'm going to go over to Robert Hart from Zest Learning. Today, we're going to be talking about how we create healthy environments where men can really thrive. And two guys are going to cover that are in about half an hour. Dave Burt, who does a lot of work with sports clubs, and we all know blokes spend a lot of time in sports clubs. But first, we've got Robert Hart, who does a lot of work in terms of workplace health and well-being. And in recent times, you've probably noticed there's been a bit of a pandemic. So that workplace has become often our home. And so I think that's what Robert's going to be focusing on, how we keep our home life and our work life healthy, particularly when we're working from home. I hope I've got that right, Robert.
Definitely. Thanks, Glenn, for having me. It's great to be here. Real honour to be part of the proceedings this week. So thank you. Great to be here.
You're very welcome. We'll hand over to you. You've got the floor to give us what you want to give us about the world that you know very well.
Thank you, Glenn. Well, for all those watching, thanks, and I hope you're having a great Men's Health Week. It's fabulous that we have these initiatives now available to everyone, men and people who care for the men in their lives. So welcome. My company, Zest Learning, has been around for about a decade, and we've been working predominantly with fly in, fly out workers over in various parts of the Australian landscape. And as you'd know, anyone that's worked in that environment, that can be quite a pressure container as well, being away from family and friends. And despite coronavirus happening, many of those workers are still operating as pretty much as they were, but with some changes to sanitary and practices that we have. Now, what I wanted to focus on today is, of course, our office has now become perhaps our kitchen table, or indeed our dining room with all of our family members around us. And what I thought, because I've got half an hour today, I've been running a program called Lockdown Learning, which is two parts to that. We're in lockdown and we're learning something, but hopefully these practices you can lock down and recall after Corona finishes. So I wanted to talk a bit about stress and habit loops to begin with. Then I'll move into some quick activities to help you find a moment of calm in what can be quite an overwhelming day when it's a bit claustrophobic at home. And we'll jump. I thought really I could cover so many things, but my real passion is looking at sleep. And sleep by far is one of the best foundations to help build we've had the Blokes Healthy Lunchbox talking about exercise. I always say to people, if you're going to look at diet, exercise or sleep, get your sleep right first, because that will regulate your appetite and also help you have the mental clarity and energy to go and tackle your exercise. So we're going to use sleep. I'm going to give you 7 practical tips to get a better night's sleep tonight in whatever environment you find yourself, whether that be a FIFO cabin or the luxuries of a family home. Well, let's begin then. First of all, sources of stress. Something to bear in mind when we work at home is typically, as a former psychologist, I use a lot of the stuff in physiology and psychology to apply with evidence-based a number of things that we want to focus on helping people with. So when I look at stress, I often think it's a bit like a balloon, that if we overinflate that balloon, it will pop at its most weakest point. And for many men, that weakest point might be a bit of temper, a bit of self-medicating happening, a bit of withdrawing or wanting to escape from the family or people around them. And it's trying here during lockdown to create new habit loops. So I'm going to share 3 thoughts on that very, very quickly. Number 1, many of you would be used to the commute to work, and you'd be getting up, having a shower, shave if you want to, get your clothes on, get out the door, or go to the gyms that were once open. If you're finding yourself sleeping in a bit, waking up with a bit of lethargy and not quite in the groove, one of the practical tips I'd suggest straight away is to walk to work. So get out of bed as the sun comes up. If you're normally getting up at 6, get up out of bed, put some gym gear on and go for a walk, almost like you're walking to work. Get your mind in the game that you're actually leaving the house. You can come back and then have a shower and put some work clothes on. So even though I've been working from home today, this is my third online program I've run today, I put a suit on because I was seeing some senior people. I also wanted to look smart on TV as well, but also it gets me in the zone. There's a psychologist called Galinsky who in 2012 talked about something called enclosed cognition. Now, enclosed cognition. What he suggested was, with his research, that when you put on an outfit that suggests work, your brain and body follow. So enclosed cognition. I found this is a really good way to create a habit loop when no habits were existing. We've got a child at home, homeschooling. My partner is a dance and Pilates teacher who works in the evenings. I've got the living room for my work in the daytime, and we're trying to wrestle this whole program, around the place. So having some habit loops that work effectively are extremely helpful. So my suggestion to all of you out there is get up, have a walk to work, do some exercise if you can in the first 90 minutes of the day, get your gear on and start setting up the day. Now, to reduce stress, starting to acknowledge the day in 90-minute chapters is very important. So let me explain why that is. We have something called the Ultradian Rhythm, and that is a 90-minute peak and trough cycle when we are managing our stress. So if you start work at 8, make sure you take a break at 9:30. That might just be a short cuppa or a walk outside. Then another 90 minutes and then take another break, which probably be around lunchtime. Make sure you have at least 15 to 20 minutes away from the desk and try and re-engage with those around you in the house and then go back to work. By having 90-minute chapters, you can have a on-off sort of pulse during the day. Now, that's a good way to create habit loops. Now, we are very adjustable as human beings, and psychologically, week 1 probably looks a lot different to week 12 or 14 in terms of where we are in lockdown. So a couple of things I wanted you to think about. We tend to fall into something called a downward spiral. And the downward spiral has 4 elements to it. First of all, it begins with something called confusion, where we just feel a bit overwhelmed and there's too much going on for us around us. It might be kids running around the house. It might be our partner at home with us. It might be extended family members in the household during lockdown. And that just feels a bit overwhelming. So to have a to-do list for the day and the chapters of 90 minutes on and a few moments off is helpful. The next one to look for is make sure you're not falling into disengagement. Now, many of you will know what that feels like because you've driven home from work with lots on your mind and you arrive in the driveway and you think, how the hell did I get here? Because your brain was somewhere else and you're on autopilot. Watch that because it means that you need to take a break and hydrate and maybe your blood sugar is a little bit low as well. When we're stressed, we keep going and we don't really take a moment to take a breath. The last one is withdrawn. Now, gentlemen out there, withdrawn is something I always look for as a particularly male response to stress. In the FIFO environment, it often shows up when you've done a long shift with your work colleagues and you go back to lunch and sit on your own, or you go in the evening to your room and withdraw away from the group because you just feel a bit flat and disengaged. Now, withdrawal is a real watch point. And having worked in looking at sort of male suicide prevention and other things, withdrawn is a warning sign for me. Make sure if you do see somebody in your household falling into that, or you yourself, try and engage with others, even if it feels like you don't really want to. That's different from introverts who want to withdraw and just recharge. If you're starting to fall into a pattern of being solitary, it's a danger zone, and try and see if you can connect online with a friend or somebody else. When this whole thing started, social isolation, I challenged on LinkedIn with an article that it's actually physical isolation. When we start telling people they're socially isolated, it starts to create a mindset that we are withdrawn and reclusive, when we actually need to reach out and connect. Women are a lot better at doing that than us. They tend to tend and befriend, but ours is a default withdrawn and protect. The last one, gents, is distress. So we've got confusion, disengagement, withdrawal, and distress. If you experience distress, it's things like waking up in the middle of the night, tight chest, rapid breathing, feeling a bit catastrophic in your thinking patterns, or ruminating on little things that went wrong yesterday or the years before, and we get stuck in the past or fearful. Distress also shows up when we take an annual leave break in our normal work cycle and are burned out and sick by day 2 because we pushed our immune system so hard. All those stress hormones, if we're not taking a break or exercising or sleeping well, will tend to really hit us hard and deplete our immune system. So when you're in distress, it's often anxiety that shows up, and that can be in three ways. Physical, I mentioned the tight chest, rapid breathing, muscle spasms, feeling a bit overwhelmed. Behavioral, where we start to compulsively act out things like overly hand washing, which I know at the moment is quite in vogue, but it's these little obsessive compulsive tendencies. And the third one is mood, when we tend to fall into catastrophic thinking. So you can see that anxiety across those three areas. Now, one of the things to try and fix this is to reduce the adrenaline levels. And I'm going to show and work with you on a 90-second exercise to calm you, and then we'll look at some sleep techniques, which I hope would be valuable for you. So I've given you a bit of a sign of habit loops, some things to do to get new habits happening in the workplace and the environment. Talked a bit about the downward spiral, the things to spot if you're feeling stressed. And then we're going to have a look at a breathing technique to alleviate some of that adrenaline and walk through 6 or 7 very quick practical sleep tips. And before I go there, I don't know if my other panel members wanted to ask a question on what I've covered just to keep things lively, or if you'd like me to plow straight into sleep. All right, good. Okay, so everybody there, if you are sat there nice and still, I'd invite you to sit up nice and straight in your chairs if you're online watching, and place your feet flat on the floor. You've got to feel the grounded. Sometimes nice to do that in socks or bare feet if you can. If you've got your shoes on, that's cool as well. Just place your feet nice and flat on the ground. And what I want you to be aware of is not having your shoulders up around your neck, just nice and relaxed, and let them be nice and loose. You can place your hands in the lap. And I'm just going to put a timer on because I want to make sure we do this in quick pulses. We're going to breathe deliberately for 90 seconds over 3 rounds where I give you some instructions. This is a very simple task. What it will do, for those that want to know the science before we jump in, is engage your parasympathetic nervous system, which is part of the autonomic nervous system in the body. That's responsible for digestion, breathing, dilation of certain blood vessels and things like that. But as we bring in the parasympathetic nervous system, we shift the body from fight or flight, which is a stress response, into rest and digest, which when we're in an environment which is very hyperstimulating for us, particularly at home with young kids, or we can't quite find our focus in the day, a little moment's calm helps us reset. Particularly if you're sectoring your days into 90-minute chapters, you can bring this 90-second breath into the fore. So let's sit nice and relaxed as we were. And I'm going to get you to do nothing more than breathe normally for 90 seconds. Now, whether you breathe in or out, I want you to count as you breathe in and out. Each time you breathe in or out and you recognize a breath, keep adding to the total. After 30 seconds, we will see a total number of inhales and exhales that you've accumulated. So total number of breaths, breathing normally, in 30 seconds. I'll count you in. So ready? 3, 2, 1, and go. I'll take care of the time. Just counting your breath for 30 seconds. That's all you're doing. 30 seconds. And there is 30 seconds. Just acknowledge how many breaths you did in round 1. Round 2, I would like you to focus a bit more on deeper breathing this time. And what we're looking to achieve from this is halving or lowering the number of breaths that we do. So for 30 seconds now, I'm going to bring you a request to be a bit more focused on breathing and holding for a second or two, slowly exhaling, looking to half or lower the number of breaths from round 1. Okay, so let's begin in 3, 2, 1, go. Okay, so if you can now acknowledge how many breaths you did there, it might be half or lower. There's no right or wrong answer, just acknowledging the difference. It's a bit more calm that second round. Round 3, we're going to have a look at a bit more physiological breathing. And I'd like you to be aware of, we'll practice before we do it. Breathe in nice and deep through the nose. You can put a hand on the chest if you want. Feeling the chest fill, the other hand on the stomach if you wish. Breathing in as deep as you can till the lungs are almost about to pop, and you'll feel the belly pop forward a little bit, and then slowly exhale. You're engaging the diaphragm, which is what is required for us here to get that deep diaphragmatic breathing. That will help dispel and drop down the heart rate, burn off some of the adrenaline we might be feeling, and gets us focused. That deep breath is so important. Now, as we do round 3, I'd like you to do some nice deep breathing. If it helps, you can count 3 on the in-breath, hold for 2, slowly exhale for 5 on the out-breath. And while you're doing that, just check in with the thoughts to see what's happening in the mind. So 30 seconds of deep breathing, catching the emotional state you might be in, recognizing any tension in the body. So off we go, 30 seconds. Deep diaphragmatic breathing. Don't worry about counting how many you do. And there we have it. There's 30 seconds. So what you should have achieved there is round 1, normal breathing. Round 2, looking to half or lower the number of breaths from the first round. Round 3, we're looking here just to be conscious of that diaphragmatic breath and check in with our thoughts. When we're very stressed, what we tend to see happen is our short-term memory gets flooded with too much stimulus. That's the prefrontal cortex here. And then we start to become more triggered and snappy. Our sort of, let's say, monkey mind starts to take hold of us. That's the limbic system or the amygdala, more alert for threats, and we get a bit more snappy. That breath helps bring back the focus to here, blood flow back into the body, drop the adrenaline levels. So hopefully that helps you. I'd like you to think also, when you're doing round 3, catch, check, and change. Catch your emotional state. Ask yourself, wow, I feel a bit flat or a bit anxious. Is that useful for my next task? And if it isn't, change something. Do a few more deep breaths, take a moment to walk outside, have a break. Just shifting the mindset. This is a great way to take care of yourself in this current environment. Just being aware a couple of times a day of doing that breath to check in with your thoughts and see how you're traveling. Okay, now folks, what we'll do is we've touched on a nice breathing technique to dispel some stress. In the last 10 minutes or so, I'm going to give you 7 practical tips to improve your night's sleep. Again, the environment which we often can't control in the daytime, we can put a bit of effort in to get better sleep at night. Now, I could talk a lot about the science of sleep, but I want to give you just some quick practical tips. Why do we sleep? Well, if you could take a supplement that would give you all this: lower blood pressure, an increased athletic performance of 10 to 30% the next day, efficient metabolism and weight management, increased life expectancy, reduced aging process, heightened memory and concentration, reduced cancer and diabetes risk, and also here increased fertility levels. Would you take that supplement if there were no side effects? I think many of us might. That supplement is actually 7 to 8 hours of sleep per night, and you can get some great results from that. And that comes from the work of Dr. Matthew Walker, who wrote a great book called Why We Sleep. The other evidence I'm going to share with you comes from Dr. Russell Foster, who's written at Oxford University, now somewhere in the US, and Charles Sazler, who worked at the Harvard Medical School. Now, if we don't sleep 7 hours a night, we are at risk of something called functional intoxication, which means that we're actually subpar cognitively and physically. Now, if you don't sleep 7 hours a night on average, if that starts to compound across the week, you're cognitively as impaired as drinking a standard unit of alcohol in terms of cognitive prowess. Now, that means that you have less reaction time, less spatial awareness of distance and speed, and that's a real challenge if you're looking at working in a FIFO environment or heavy goods vehicle environment. But for most of us, it just means that we're less accurate and engaged. How do we improve our sleep? Well, here's the best well-being tips I could possibly give you after that breathing technique. Number 1, let's have a look at some of these very, very briefly. Lock in your wake-up time 7 days a week. That's an environment you can try and create. By locking in your wake-up time, you lock in something called the suprachiasmatic nucleus, which is a size of basmati rice, part of your brain, links to the optic nerve, and also links to the pineal gland, which is what releases melatonin into the brain. Now, if you can regulate that suprachiasmatic nucleus, you're starting to create an environment of great sleep quality. So waking up at the same time every day will reset the clock and help you focus so that you don't have jet lag. If you sleep in on the weekend, by Monday, whatever hours you've slept in on the weekend, you'll be struggling in the Monday morning. The next one is, if you have a very busy mind, folks, out there, and your mind is filled with stuff, and probably like myself, I'll tend to lie down at night. It's often the first time I've got a bit of white space in the calendar or quiet time in the day. And that's immediately when all those thoughts and ideas bubble up. Have a small notepad next to your bed rather than a device, because I'll show you why you don't want a device to do this. Write down what's on your mind. Your brain needs certainty. Now, to improve your well-being, capturing your thoughts at night the to-do list for tomorrow, the idea that's popped up, or the nagging annoyance that you can't quite shake off. Write it down, and it will let the brain rest temporarily. So you're sleeping on the problem. It's very helpful. Third technique. So we've got lock-in wake-up time, write it down at bedtime. Third technique is aim for 7 to 8 hours of sleep. Now, for men over 40, the biggest challenge for that is that you often need to wake up to urinate in the middle of the night because your bladder's full. Now, if I can give you a suggestion is, I've got a mug of green tea here, but we need about 9 of these water per day to get us through 2 litres or so to keep everything hydrated and our brain working effectively in our body, cleansing toxins out. If you front load, say 12 glasses, if you've got to drink those, drink 9 of those before 2 p.m., you will regulate your bladder more effectively. And it means that you've got to leave your desk a lot more, which is a good thing to urinate. And then you don't have a big full bladder at night. This is the next one for you. These next 3 are very important. Catch the sleepy wave. What I mean by that is if any of you have fallen asleep on your couch or your armchair, there's benefits to that. I mean, it feels lovely. If you're sort of watching a movie or an old rerun of a sports game and you fall asleep in the evening. The problem is though, if you've got a lovely family member at home, they'll put a blanket on you and a pillow under your head. But if you've got a cruel one, they'll wait till you're drawn and put pictures of you all over Facebook. And you've got to watch for that. So my challenge to you is here, when you start to spot the sleepy signs, get to bed, because you can then ride that tide of melatonin in bed. And otherwise it takes you 90 minutes to have to get undressed. To get undressed and get back into bed means you haven't got to wait 90 minutes till you're in a deep sleep cycle again. So using that wave of sleepiness in bed is far better. Caffeine's the next one, folks. I want to very briefly touch on this. The average tolerance is around 350 milligrams per day for humans. And to give you context there, an espresso costs 120, depending on the roast, to about 160. And Monster Energy drink, which you may have seen on the shelves, has not only 13 teaspoons of sugar, but also around 350 milligrams of caffeine in it. So if you're anxious or stressed, any level of caffeine is going to ramp that up to the max. The rule is stop caffeine around 2 p.m. if you're hitting bedtime around 10:30, because you will not be able to get into deep sleep waves because caffeine has a massive half-life in the body. It can be up to 12 hours. You can have a stimulus from caffeine still. What we started doing with a lot of our customers is encouraging them to exercise in the morning, ride the wave of that energy through to lunchtime, then have a coffee, and then not have coffee after 2 o'clock. They've seen huge improvements in their sleep quality and more energy. It's the best thing I can tell you in terms of a sleep tip there. A good thing you can do is have a power nap between 1:30 and 2. And if you're going to have your lunchtime coffee, here's a suggestion for you. Have your coffee around 1:30 or 1. Have your power nap, because caffeine takes 20 minutes to hit the nervous system, and you will wake up refreshed as the caffeine hits. So your 20-minute power nap gives you about 2.5 hours more brain power, and you can do that in the afternoon. You can call it a critical recovery period if you don't like the word nap, and that's what sleep doctor Peter Littlehales calls it. He's a sports doctor that worked with a lot of Premier League football teams in the UK, and he would say that aim for 35 cycles of 90 minutes per week particularly if you're a young father or you've got young kids in the room, or you've got a particularly weird cycle of things going on for you. Don't worry about the 7 hours so much, but try and aim for 35 cycles of 90 minutes, and that could include a power nap. The last one is unplugged time before bedtime. Then I will be wrapping up on this. So unplugged time before bedtime is very simple. Keep off screens. You've got 4 brainwaves, well 5 actually: gamma, beta, alpha, theta, and delta. Beta is the busy brain, the monkey mind that gets easily distracted in an open plan environment. Alpha is the kind of brainwaves you get when you're in the shower and you get a great idea, or you're walking the dog. You're relaxed but alert. Theta, semi-meditative. Delta, deep sleep. So caffeine messes with delta waves. But what we want here is to avoid beta waves before bed, which screens will stimulate you to. Now, very quickly, this will be my final point, will be have a look on your phone. If you have an Apple device, you can find in settings, display and brightness, you will find something called night shift. And I've got mine set up. If I tap night shift, I've got it set up from sunset to sunrise, which means as the sun sets where I'm based here in Melbourne, it will go orange. And if I work in WA or anywhere else around the country, it will know what time zone I'm in. And rather than being a bright white screen, it will make it orange, which helps release melatonin and also does not stimulate your brain into beta waves, which are the alert waves. Those of you with an Android device, you can flick up, and I believe in there is a blue light filter. This also works for iPad, But for those of you who are interested and have a home laptop, which may not be a work one, you can type the following into Google and download a free piece of software which does not have a sign up or any affiliation with an organization. It's just a free piece of software a sleep doctor designed, and that is called lowercase f, so f.lux, f.lux or f.lux. You can download that and it will replicate the night shift function on your home computer, whether that be Google Chromebook, Mac or PC. And it's a free piece of software that a sleep doctor designed with no spam or sign up. And all of that hopefully is of use to you. So lock in wake up time, write it down at bedtime, 7 hours sleep per night, catch the sleepy wave in bed, not the couch, manage your caffeine, unplug time before bed, and a 20-minute power nap. These will give you some fantastic leverages. And my challenge to you is, and I'll leave you with this thought, try and aim for progression, not perfection, with these sleep tips and breathing tips. So rather than trying to do them all at once, maybe try the breathing activity a couple of times a week. Build it into your daily routine. Try and pick a couple of the sleep tips. The coffee is the best one, along with the screen. And then you'll be absolutely on your way to improving a better environment for yourself and those around you. Thanks for having me today. And I'll wrap up there just ahead of time in case there's any questions or we want to transfer to the next person. Thanks for having me today.
Oh, thanks, Robert. That was superb. You're a master Zoom presenter.
Thanks for the kindness there. It's a real joy to be part of it today. So thanks.
Yeah. So you've given me some good tips, but also some language. I mean, firstly, the breathing one. One of the things that I did in lockdown was I need a goal. I'm the kind of person who needs a goal to keep me going, and so I've been working on my second marathon of my 50s. I did my first marathon of my 50s in November last year, and decided that what I would try and do. This is my birthday present to myself. I should have got a Harley Davidson or something. Was that I would set myself a challenge of running a marathon every year in my 50s, and see if I could improve the time. Wow. So the first one was just about actually finishing. And then this year, especially in lockdown, I got myself one of those sport watches for the first time to start to measure what was happening with my speed and my heart rate and stuff. What I didn't expect was that when I've been sitting, I've got this habit when I sit, I do far too much sitting. So just and not just sitting, I actually stop breathing. When I'm working on something, I actually forget to breathe. Believe it, and my partner will shout in the background, "Breathe!"
Yeah.
Because she notices that when I'm tense or working on a difficult email, I will keep holding my breath until I get to the end of the email. It's an odd habit that I have, right? So what the smartwatch has started to do is, if I've been sitting down for an hour, it taps me on the wrist and tells me to stand up.
Brilliant! It's really good.
But also it's got the breathing function, which it sort of like says, try breathing even for a minute. It might help, and it gives a little rhythm of I never considered it before, but it's been a real bonus. Because my partner says you needed to pay $800 on a sports watch to tell you to stand up. I could have told you that.
You know what, though, Glenn? There is a thing called email apnea. It's actually, Google it, anyone online. Email apnea is actually a condition where people hold their breath. It's very prevalent in call centers with people on phones and high pressure jobs. So you're among good company there.
I've got a condition. I can now go to
email apnea.
Excellent. Because I was going to thank you for the other bit of language you gave me, but I'm going to write down email apnea as well. But the other one you gave me was because I also I now understand that I'm a man who's very good at making use of his critical recovery periods. Yeah, good. I'm a snoozer, but I now have critical recovery periods.
See, go for it.
Excellent. So is there any way you'd like to send people to find out more information about the work that you do before we
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'm on LinkedIn. It's Robert Hart. That's HART. And my company, as says on the avatar there, is Zest Learning in Australia. So it's zestlearning.com.au. You can contact me through there. We just run programs in wellbeing, leadership development, creative thinking for all organizations, and do also one-to-one coaching as well. So if you want any articles or anything like that, do feel free to contact me. I'll be always happy to have conversations with people.
Fantastic. We've posted a link to your website on the Facebook feed here.
That's very kind. Thank you.
Make sure it's linked wherever we share this video. And I think there's a link to your LinkedIn on the homepage of your website. If that's, perfect.
Thanks for having me.
No, it's great to see you. I think I met you this time last year. It was Men's Health Week in Melbourne, right?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it's a really enjoyable day. Yeah, it's good.
I hope we manage to catch up again before next Men's Health Week.
Likewise, and good luck with the marathons.
Yeah, thanks. I'll let you know how I go.
Thank you.
Right, that was Robert Hart from Zest Learning. You're listening and watching Men's Health TV. In this hour, we're talking men's mental health with a particular focus on how do we create environments where men can thrive. Robert there talking about the work environment, but also thinking about how you make your home environment healthy, particularly when you're working from home, as a lot of us have been doing in recent weeks. Our next guest, Dave Burt of SALT, which stands for Sport and Life Training, is very focused on the world of sport, as you can tell from that name, but particularly the culture of sports clubs. And so Dave's going to focus on how do we make sports clubs healthy environments, because it's a place where a lot of blokes spend a lot of time. Dave, thanks for being here.
You're welcome. Thank you. And that was terrific listening to Robert. I think I took half a page of notes, Robert. And,
thanks. That's very generous.
I went and changed my shirt and came back with a collared shirt because I thought I might look a bit more professional. And I met somebody who I reckon is lazier than me because he actually can't be bothered breathing. And that makes me look like a super athlete.
It's a lot of hard work. You've got to go in and out, and then you've got to do it all over again.
That was terrific, Robert. Except that, I don't know, it's quitting coffee at 2:00 in the afternoon. I love the idea of the power nap. The 2:00, the last coffee, that's going to be a challenge.
That was a challenge. Thanks.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. So, my name's Dave. I'm the founder of SALT, Sport and Life Training. So it's an acronym. It's taking the attributes that we have in sport, the courage, the sacrifice, the commitment, the teamwork, the good communication that we exhibit, the good decision-making under pressure. Here are these attributes that when we play sport, we obviously have the strengths that we've developed. And it became apparent to me many, many years ago that often we were at our very best when we were playing sport. So for a long time, I was a phys ed teacher and a sports coach, and I used to watch, particularly the young men that I coached. If it was a football team, you could ask them to do anything in the name of sport. If you asked them to come off the field, they'd sprint off the field to make way for the next person that didn't want to come off the field. They'd handball the ball from 15 metres out to the boy who was 5 metres out and give away the goal that they could have kicked. You ask them to do, a 2K time trial, and they'd run till they were ready to vomit. They'd throw themselves across the line. They were totally dedicated to sport. And yet I'd often notice that some of the same people, particularly the boys that sit in the back row at school and would disengage with education, they'd throw a rubber at the kid in the front row and sometimes be rude to their teacher or rude to their parent because they didn't value education or vocation or relationships, these things that were so essential to life, as much as they did sport. And I could see that a lot of their self-esteem, their kudos, their image came from their reputation if they were good at sport. So, here was this area of life that had such potential, and yet as my kids were growing up, and I wanted them to play sport as I did, there were attributes of particularly senior sporting clubs, particularly senior men's sporting clubs, which I felt were still really unhealthy. There was often still an attitude towards binge drinking that celebrated that as part of our rite of passage. There was still often very sexualised attitudes towards women in the way that men spoke around many clubs. And there was certainly a lack of opportunity to speak up if you were going through an issue. The sporting club wasn't going to be the place that you would talk about that for fear that you might be branded weak. And so here was these sporting clubs so terrific on the field and yet off the field, often not even living up to some of society's standards, sometimes actually worse than. And what would it look like, I used to say to people 15 years ago, if sporting clubs could capture that dedication to being their very best and apply it to the things which are actually more important than the sporting performance. And I sort of coined the phrase, or probably heard it somewhere else, that sport's not about sport; it's about people. And that really, when we're there, we're there because we love the people and we love to do something together. But I don't think anybody really ever challenged some of the norms in sporting clubs. And so there's a few stories, and I might tell you a couple of stories. And out of each story, I'll lift some teaching points if that's okay. So to begin with, I was helping out down at the Eastern Ranges. It was a under-19 competition and in footy. It was an elite competition where the players were recruited if they felt that they might be draft worthy into the AFL. So the kids were very, very ambitious. And I quickly learned that for most of those kids, they were putting all their eggs into one basket, and that was to get drafted. And most of their image, most of their reputation, even sometimes their parents' admiration came from the fact that they were very good at sport. And most of them didn't get drafted. That team won a premiership in 2013 and got 4 boys drafted into the AFL. So, they were excellent players, but most of them had to go on and actually do life outside of footy, or with footy just as a hobby. And they went through a lot of grief because actually it was about their performance that was so important. And I tried to talk to the boys down at Eastern Ranges over a few years about seeing sport in a much wider context, that actually it's about life, and that if you can be a part of this program and learn these wonderful self-discipline type things, these self-control, these putting my mate before myself, all the things that they learn when they play a high-level sport, then even if you don't make it to the Olympics or to the state cricket team or whatever it is you're aspiring to, you're going to go back into life as a far better prepared person. And so this was my dream in starting SALT, which we did back in 2015 as a not-for-profit. But it also came off the back of my having visited 7 football clubs who'd each had a tragedy. In most cases, it was a suicide in the club. The first one I went to was a club called the Ferntree Gully Footy Club back in about 2014. And they'd lost somebody dear to them. And I was asked to go and talk to them about grief and loss. And when I turned up, I thought that I'd be addressing them. But it turned out that nobody greeted me, and there was no structure to the evening, and people were standing around in circles just kind of talking to each other. So I said, I joined one of the groups, and after a while, I just made a few practical suggestions. Maybe somebody could take a meal around to the house. Maybe somebody could go around and mow the lawns. Maybe we could have a little speech in his honour on Saturday before the game. Somebody heard what I was saying, and they said, everybody in the room should be listening to this. So they yelled out, everybody in the room, shut up and listen. And then he pointed at me, he said, we've got an expert in the room, and he's going to talk to us now. And I wasn't an expert at all. I felt quite out of my depth, but the things I was saying were pretty simple. It was just that in that moment, I had a clear head and a warm heart, and they were struggling, and they needed somebody to just give direction. So I repeated the same things, and afterwards I asked for some comments and for people to share, and it opened up and people started to share. And I remember the president of the club saying, we never saw it coming. He said if it had been money, we would have given him money. If it had been any kind of help, we would have offered it, but we never saw it coming. And as I said, that was the first of 7, and the consistent message every time was, we never saw it coming. Now, back in 2014, La Trobe Uni does a study through the Centre for Sport and Social Impact, and they find that within our footy clubs, but I think you could, spread that out to most sporting clubs, that we're typically 3 times more connected than we are at school or we are at work. And that even spending $1 before we improve clubs was going to equate to about $4.40 in social return, just because of the good things happening in clubs. And that if you influence a young footballer, that typically they'll influence another 10 people, because we put them on a bit of a pedestal. We don't put scientists on a pedestal, we put footballers on a pedestal in this country. So if they've got a certain kind of groupthink, it's going to influence other people. And I became very convinced that sporting clubs were going to be the places to affect change. They were filled with people who wanted to be there, who were dedicated to each other. And it wasn't a quantum leap to say, if you care for your mate on the field, if you put a block on for him on the court or on the field because you don't want him to get hurt, would you do the same thing at a party? if he was going to cross the floor and go and use illicit drugs in that room where you know that's going on? Or does your care for him cease after you walk off that football field? And they'd say, no, we actually care about them all of the time. So I started to challenge them about being more consistent in the way that they behaved, and they wanted this. Sporting clubs are filled with people who want to be the best that they can. And what we already know, of course, is that this whole hyper-masculine thing, which we get told, is important, most people aren't buying into. Most men aren't buying into. There's a bit of a fear that if we don't follow that we might be judged. But actually, they don't believe that, the big talking guy with the tats and the muscles and the big drinking capability is the guy that they want to be. And so we found very little resistance. And in fact, 5 years ago was just the beginning of clubs starting to see their power in terms of affecting social change, and particularly junior clubs where parents were very concerned. Here are their kids going into a world where they're going to be offered drugs. They're going to quite likely develop mental health issues. They've got real problems around body image and all sorts of other things. And they would love for those sporting clubs to be places that enhanced their kids' capabilities to do life successfully in the future, to have some, strong resolve. So I'll make some points as we move on about what I've seen in sporting clubs and what I think sporting clubs can aspire to be without having to change too many things in regards to who they are. Firstly, we recognise that they're filled with volunteers. This is very powerful, and volunteerism is dying out in our country. We know that. And so the times when, the players thought that they had entitlement, that they would come in and somebody else is going to pick up their crap that they throw on the ground, and that everybody's going to kind of worship them because they play a reasonable level of sport, is gone. We have to absolutely value and respect our volunteers and include them in all of the social activities and the things that we do. And those people are exempling something that's really important to our society, and that's putting back in when somebody or some place has served you, that you put back in. I want to make the point that people want to be the best that they can be. Another story, I went to a club that had been on the third page of the newspaper because they'd had strippers in to the club, and they'd had underage kids there, and we went in and did a respect and equality course with them. And I guess when I arrived, they kind of felt like I was going to be judgmental and tell them that they were stupid and so on. And they were quite defensive at the outset. They were ready to defend what they'd done. And when I said, tell me about that, they said, oh, look, all clubs do it. We just got caught. And I said, well, let's just not bother to investigate that. But I want to ask you some questions. What kind of club do you want to be? What kind of influence do you want to have on kids coming through? What sort of reputation do you want to have? Would a really excellent club do what you did? And of course, they answered those questions to say, we want to be an excellent club. And therefore, does it fit to have strippers and underage kids? And they said, no, it doesn't fit. And so what I learnt there was, again, that good questions are more important than good statements. And if we do just dig in a little bit into the average person in the average footy club, they want that place to be the very best that it can. But sometimes they're conceding to an old way of doing things. Men will talk. Men want to talk. And the sporting club is a place where they will talk, and we don't actually have to do a great deal. I'll tell you another story. I went to the Bond Beach Football Club after a young man, aged 19, had died by suicide. And I walked out of the ground 2 days after the event, and I spoke to the first, seconds and under 19s. I spoke to them about grief and loss for about 5 or 10 minutes. And then I said, Coach has given you permission to come into the rooms and talk if you want to. You don't have to. You can train if you want to. I didn't know how many would come, but the whole under-19 team followed me off. Standing around the edge of the ground were friends and family who'd come to that football club, I guess not knowing where else to go, to share their grief. And they followed into the rooms as well. And we set the boys out in a kind of horseshoe shape, 18 and 19-year-old boys. The coach introduced me and he said, boys, you know that I love you. I've coached many of you to 2 premierships, but I don't know what to do here. So I've got an expert in the room. And again, I refuted the name expert because I don't know who he is in this particular situation. And I started by asking the first boy on my left, I said, on a scale of 1 to 10, if 10 means you're coping well and 1 means you're really struggling, what number are you? And I did this for the first few boys, and they all said, oh, we're okay. We're a 5 or a 6 or a 7. You know, we knew him. We didn't know him that well. We're sad because everybody else is, etc. And there was a bit of sort of a mask. But I got to about the 3rd or 4th boy, and he said, I'm really struggling. I'm a 2. He said, I was driving to work today. I got about halfway. I burst into tears. I turned around. I went back home again. And it turned out that he was the next door neighbour of the boy who died. The boy who died was Justin. His name was Peter. And I said, Pete, have you got some support? And we started to ask him some questions. And then I said, hand up if you're a mate of Pete's. And immediately every single boy in the circle put their hand up. I said, now keep your hand up if you're willing to check in with Pete. I don't mean every day, but as is natural, over the next few days, weeks, months, if you're committed to making sure that Pete's okay and you're there for him, keep your hand up. And every boy kept their hand up, and they were eyeballing him. They wanted him to see. They were very determined that he knew. And I said, have a look, Pete, lift your head. And as he lifted his head, he looked through his tears and he acknowledged that every single boy in the room was there for him, staring at him, saying, we're here for you. And I continued to go around, and after Pete had spoken, he had given them permission. Firstly, the coach had said, boys, you know that I love you. Then Pete had been the first one to share that he wasn't coping. And the other boys started to sense there was something special going on in the room that we hadn't experienced before, but was possible within this sporting club. But as I'm speaking, a man moves from the back of the room, and he comes and stands next to me, and I don't know who he is. And he's about my age, he's fairly dishevelled. He says, I need to speak to the boys. So I said, okay. And it turned out he was the father of Justin. His name was Graham, and he'd been in the room the whole time and I didn't know. And he said, boys, my son was strong because he took on a train, but my son was weak because he didn't talk to someone when he had a problem. So I'm going to open my home on a Thursday night, and if you come past, I'll put on pizzas and you'll help me because you'll take the place of my son. And maybe I can help you by being another father role model in your life. And 2 years ago, I went back to the Bomb Beach Football Club. I invited Graham to come with me to a senior presentation. He was still doing that 4 years later. His home was open. Those boys would still come past. He'd create that non-judgmental space. It was part of his healing. Anyway, we finished hearing from all of the boys. And afterwards, I was speaking to Graham, the father. And he said yesterday, the day after the tragedy, 200 or 300 kids from the local schools, anybody who knew Justin, were rioting on the railway tracks. They were smashing things, they were throwing rocks, they were crying, they were yelling, they were graffitiing, they were out of control. And the police were trying to get them off the tracks and they couldn't. And the teachers were trying to get them back into the school and they couldn't. They wouldn't respect anybody, they were out of control, they didn't know how to grieve. So he said they rang me and asked me to come and tell the kids to get off the tracks, and I went up and I said to them, get off the tracks, because this is not what Justin would have wanted. And in respect to me, they got off the tracks. And this was a very, very salient moment for me, because I thought, I've just seen these boys open their hearts, and where did they choose to do it? Where did they choose to cooperate and be real and be vulnerable? It was in the sporting club. And when that coach said, boys, you know that I love you, I don't know whether they did. Maybe they sensed it. He probably never said it before. It probably took a suicide before he would say it. But when he said it, I think they knew it was true. I think they knew that every time they'd put their body in the way of an opponent for the sake of their teammate, every time they'd put their head over the ball, every time they'd done the hard things together in the name of sport that we put up so high, they'd done it because they did love each other. And this was a place that they could show that. And immediately I thought, right, I don't want to be going to sporting clubs after suicides. I want to be going before that. And I want every single club to see the potential that they have with the volunteer networks, with the coaches, with the role models, with the people that's that little bit older that kids are going to look up to and aspire to be like, to model manhood in a very different way, where we can actually say that what you did on that sporting field showed courage. But pouring beer down your throat doesn't show courage. And if your mate's got problems at home and he's getting angry with his wife or his girlfriend, to speak into that situation does show courage. And let's reevaluate what courage looks like. And so we find this now as a very, very effective way of changing what a club is about. And during this COVID period, where we can't actually play sport in the most part, well, what is a sporting club when it doesn't have sport? It's a collection of people who still want to be with each other, still need to connect with each other, and can quite possibly start to build a foundation that says when this club comes back, we're still going to focus on winning premierships, but that's going to be a byproduct of a whole lot of other things that we put in place. And the number one is that we're going to build connections within this club. We're going to make sure that we have systems whereby we have a club wellbeing team, where everybody in the club knows that if you speak up about a mental health issue, somebody else is there for you and they'll connect you in to a specialist or into a network that can help you to get through this difficult time. And so that's what we're aiming to do, and clubs get it. And we only have to look at probably every successful club in the world, whether you're talking about the All Blacks or Barcelona or the Richmond Football Club. These are clubs that have realised the importance of connection and vulnerability, and there's been a ton written about it, and their performance has excelled. But that's a byproduct of actually not putting performance first and foremost, of putting people and our health before that. If we're going to have changes in club culture, we have to have the influencers. It can't be an add-on. So if they say, yep, come in and do a salt session and talk to our guys, but we'll be out in the selection room picking the teams for Saturday because that's of far more importance. You can just talk to the players. We won't do it anymore. You have to have the influences in there. And typically in the past, within sporting clubs, often the president was the last man left standing. He perhaps didn't have the people skills, the strength to rein a club in if it needed that to happen. And so choosing your president, choosing your coach. I mean, again, today, good coaches are not all about knowing about the sport. They're far more about understanding the people and what brings the best out of people and having those relationships and empowering other people, your line coaches or whoever it is, to be the major strategists on game day and so on. But your role to be getting to know players and what brings the best out in them. So I think the way that we select our leadership teams, our captains, our coaches needs to be thoroughly reviewed within clubs if we're going to get the best performance. We need to appoint leaders and coaches and so on character and values over strategic acumen or past sporting performance. I think the introduction of women's sport, and I'm talking largely women's footy, but also women's cricket, has probably been the best thing that could have ever happened to sporting clubs to help them understand some of the balances that were missing, to start to recognise that they don't have that sense of entitlement, and to start practising the sort of equality and respect that sometimes was allowed to go missing in the past. I think clubs need to look beyond the sale of alcohol as revenue for paying players, and that if one good thing comes out of this COVID period, it is that they're going to have to cut their payments significantly, which is going to determine who plays for the fun of the game and who is playing to get paid. And then we don't have to exacerbate the sales of alcohol to a certain amount each month to pay our players, which is only going to contribute positively into the mental health and the culture of the club. Now, I could probably go on, but I'm sure I've just about done my time. I think I had till 1:55, and that's what it's telling me, but I'll finish up around about there, Glenn.
Great. Thanks, Dave. You are such a powerful storyteller, but you're not telling tall tales. You're telling real, authentic stories of your personal experiences, and they are deeply moving, and you're clearly making a profound difference for those that you work with.
Thanks, Glenn.
Thanks. I know we've got Robert's very generously stayed on from the first hour of the program. Robert, have you got any reflections on what Dave's just shared, and any links to the work that you're doing as well?
I really think, David, it was great. Thank you for sharing the stories. And there was some indeed, Glenn said, some very moving moments there. I really wanted to hear the stories, and particularly the Bond Beach example. Just the shift in behaviour from when I was playing professional sports years ago, or semi-professional. It's a massive shift, and it's great to see that people have evolved. I think what you shared there was great. And to get that candidness, the talking circle, very powerful. And also the father who brought those young men into the house as part of the healing process. It's great to see it's out of some sadness has come a really fantastic shift in that culture there. It's sad that it took someone's life to do that, but I'm sure, you know, what the work you're doing is inspiring. And yeah, thanks for sharing the stories. It's really, really great to hear.
Thanks, Rob.
Great. So our hour today has been very much focused on how do we create healthy environments where men can thrive. We've looked at the workplace, we've looked at working from home, and we've looked at sporting clubs and communities. If you could take just one lesson from our sort of conversation in the past hour and apply it to any environment, you know, work, pub, social club, home, I don't know, holiday, wherever, whatever environment you happen to be in. If we could take just one lesson from that, what would that be? Dave, I think I'll come to you first and then back to you, Robert.
You know, the major thing which always sat within me for a very long time was this word potential. And when we see people at their best, if we can actually, in our minds and in our speech, say, that's who I see you as. When you're at your best and you're displaying the courage, the sacrifice, the commitment, that is the real you. And everything else you do beneath that is the you that's not living to your potential. And if we could get people to actually recognise their strengths, of course, this is the whole positive psych type teaching, and to go, that's me, and it's very much linked to my values, and I'm going to act in accordance and consistency. And Robert was talking about consistency around behaviours, wasn't he? Just the routine of getting up at a certain time and doing things at certain times. It's just about creating habits around being your best self, whether it's around gratitude or other things. It's being our best self. If we can recognise our best selves, if we can point out in our teammates, that's you at your best and that's the you that I love, then we start to see people then question their own selves when they're acting lesser than that, when they're putting down the weak kid, or they're having that extra beer, or they're saying, yep, let's get a bag of cocaine now because we feel like we need it. That's not their best versions. And I can't tell you how many young people I've worked with who just love it when you identify what was good in them, because most of the time they're thinking about what was bad in themselves, and it's a change of thinking. So that would be my little takeaway.
No, that's excellent, Dave. I mean, when I do training on just working with general training on working effectively with blokes, we find a lot of people in health and social care, they've come from a paradigm where the first thought is, what's the problem we're trying to resolve here? And that very quickly can become that the bloke is a problem. And I talk about the power of actually relating to people as their potential rather than as their problem, which doesn't mean that you don't deal with the problems that are presenting or showing up, but it's just that shining the light on the potential. And what I found is sometimes you can be the first person doing that because the bloke himself might not even be tuned into it right now. It's in there somewhere. But so from an environment perspective, it's like, what do we do to make sure that we surround ourselves with people who recognize us as our potential? Because that can really empower us, So, in an ideal world, we'd just be surrounded by that. But in terms of taking action, it's like surround yourself with friends, with people that relate to you at your best. And that will make it more likely that that's how you show up in life. Great idea, Dave. Great single takeaway. Robert?
Yeah, very briefly, I think one thing to summarize is if you look at mental suffering, a lot of that is derived from too much complexity intertwined with uncertainty. And if anyone's been through COVID and the job market, the oil price, stock market, housing market, there's lots of long-term planning that you can't do. So I suggest there to reduce that complexity and the cognitive overload that comes into the brain from it. My takeaway would be build the routine, as Dave alluded to as well. If you can control how many hours you sleep, or at least have some practice around how you can improve your sleep, or put in the calendar 3 times exercise 30 minutes per week. That's your minimum effective dose. Have a plan of what you're going to eat for breakfast, when you're going to finish work hours, have a plan each day, something you can have influence over. So you say sleep hours, how much exercise you do, maybe even if you try and call someone every day, try and reduce the complexity with the predictable behavior you do each day, that 90-second breath, some of the sleep tips, that would be mine. So reduce complexity.
So then in talking about making environments healthy, then you personally can take those habits into whatever environment that you're in.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, beautiful. So that's it's been a fantastic hour. Thank you, Robert Hart of Zest Learning and Dave Burt of SALT Sports and Life Training. We're moving on now to our next program. I'll say goodbye to Robert and to Dave.
Thanks for having me.
That was Talking Men's Mental Health here on Men's Health TV. From now till 3 o'clock, we've got a new program that we're piloting today called Blokes on the Couch. Looking around, I'm not sure if any of the blokes have brought a couch, but the point here is we're bringing together blokes who work with blokes who do some kind of one-to-one work, whether it's psychology or counselling or mentoring or coaching, to share some of their experiences of working with blokes in that one-to-one setting. So joining us today, we've got 3 fantastic guests, and I'll come to you in a moment. Let me just list off the names so you know who we're speaking to. We've got John Morgan from Marcus Mission. We've got John with a H Millman from Mentoring Men. And we've got Aladdin, easy to remember Aladdin out of the 2 Johns. We've got Aladdin not John, Aladdin Jones, who is a psychotherapist and a family therapist and facilitates men's groups. And that's just about 1% of what Aladdin does. So we've got John, Jahan, and Aladdin, each bringing real rich experience to this conversation. Men, I'm going to come to you one at a time and just ask you to introduce yourselves maybe a bit better than I did, and just share with us who you are, what your work is, and in what ways do you work with blokes. Particularly thinking about working with men in a one-to-one setting. And John Morgan, I'll come to you first.
Thanks, Glenn. Yeah, so John Morgan, founder of Marcus Mission, I guess. The story behind Marcus Mission was we had a nephew that was living with us at the time who died by suicide, and was sort of scratching our heads saying, what did we miss? So we sort of, a couple of years ago, developed a really practical sort of activity-based hands-on program where we could go upstream a bit and educate fellas, both men with challenges, but also mentors, mates that want to help mates, and put them through a series of resilience building workshops, really practical with lots of tools, and then perhaps tee men who are willing up with a mentor so they can go and have a fish or a surf or what have you and do that. We also wrap around that some induction processes because we're partnered with Wesley Mission Queensland, who are wonderful, and also do suicide prevention training and also safety planning. We're doing a lot more sort of, quite pragmatic safety planning. And a big shout out to Beyond Blue, who've got a fantastic template for that too. So that's what we've done for a couple of years, and we started with the Gold Coast and we experimented more, and then we've sort of expanded into Bundaberg for the last 18 months, Sunshine Coast the last 6 months, and also the Lockie Valley and the Darling Downs. So that's kind of our program.
Right. So at the core of it, you're training blokes to have one-to-one conversations with the blokes in their lives.
Yeah, very much. Or we're training blokes that are having challenges where we can get them into a workshop and chuck around a footy, and then once they're there, they're okay. It's the fear of being vulnerable in front of others which stops them from getting there. So we're trying to sort of merge those groups a little. So you've got some aspiring mentors, but also men with challenges, but also making sure it's not a therapy session, because that's the difficulty. We've got to screen the people coming in to some degree, because it's not just about their issue, it's about broader learning and sort of empowering them with some tools to make some changes in their life, I guess.
Great. So it sounds like you've kind of got over that challenge of how do you get more blokes in one-to-one kind of therapeutic settings by doing it by stealth, by creating a kind of a community where those kind of conversations are the norm, where there's permissions to have those one-to-one conversations. Yeah,
it's interesting. I mean, like most sort of programs, Glenn, because this is new to me. I've been corporate sort of facilitator for the last 27 years. But so this is really, so I turn up at the Gold Coast, you know, with my suit pants on and my shirt, and then think, God, I'm a dickhead. Why am I wearing this? You know, so you go through those sort of iterations, I guess. And one of the things that we did initially is we went out, which was, you know, wasn't useful at all. We went out to the communities and we said, you know, any men feeling vulnerable, you know, come on in. Just didn't quite work. So then we changed that approach to, hey, if you're a bloke, then you want to be able to help another bloke, and maybe help yourself in the process. Fantastic, you know, that's great. So that certainly got a really nice. We built a really nice group of men and a stream of men who want to come in and do some work. And some of those who are really, really good too, fantastic people in the last few months where we've sort of run 25 online workshops, I guess, in the last 2.5 months, and sort of accelerated the program a bit. Also attracted some really great students, psych students, social work students who want to do some work in that area, both as a mentor, but also maybe a placement with Wesley. So that's been a real win-win as well.
That's fantastic. So the little bit I'm going to pick out of that is that part of what you focused on is the shift from the help getting to focusing on the help giving. But in the process, by doing the help giving, you're also more likely to do the help getting. Exactly. And I guess now, sort of 2 years later, we're now trying to build the referral pathways. So we're now trying to, we're about a 1 point. Glenn Woolwork is the manager of the program, and we've got a 0.4 person as well, Joe Langford, who's fantastic, you know, ex Wesley Life Force staff, who's doing the community outreach. So we're now going into those areas and going, right, let's try and structure it so they know who we are, so we can get a referral of non-acute men into the system who are hitting those situational factors, you know, divorce, custody, addiction, all that sort of stuff, but not necessarily at that acute level of suicide ideation. So yeah, that's the next push, so that we can match supply and demand, if that makes sense, get more consistent men coming into the program who could benefit from a mentor. Gotcha. Okay, so I think we've got a good grounding and understanding of who you are, who your organisation is, and some of the approaches you're taking to working with men. So, and you mentioned mentoring there, which links us nicely to John Millen from Mentoring Men. John, same thing. Want to introduce yourself? Give us a sense of how you're working with men.
Yeah. So thanks, Glenn, and you know, that's awesome to hear from John. And I've been in the last couple of weeks online and attending all the online symposiums and workshops. I'm inspired, but also amazed by the same the problem which is appearing everywhere in Australian society, right? So what we've got here is clearly a real issue, right? It maybe, you know, sometimes, and in the past, men's health has been assigned to a bit of a niche element, you know, like, you know, oh, well, you know, it's like, let's deal with a few blokes who aren't coping, right? But the view I get from so many great programs that are responding to this challenge is, I see how this problem is pervasive through Australian society and indeed the world, right? So we've got a real issue here, and it's awesome, but also scary to see how many guys are taking on the mantle of responding to that, and yet we still seem to be a little marginalised an area to work on. So it's really exciting in the last couple of weeks to see a lot of these conversations becoming much more directed and much more shared and networked and possible. And following on from John also is the founder of Mentoring Men is Ian Westmoreland, who was recently nominated, took on and basically discovered in his mind was that all of the programs that we encountered, the initiatives that were being done out there, were very much about meeting men in groups, or gathering as many as you could, or dealing with men one-on-one at the end of the cycle of struggle and pain. So the mental suffering had to reach a certain level before they became the focus of attention. And we saw mentoring as very much a way of pushing back up to the point of triggering these incidents, right? So, you and I both know that life's got its ups and downs, right? So everyday challenges sometimes involve being sad, shamed, disappointed. We have grief events, we have trauma, right? And a bloke will process these things. You're never quite sure, though, if one of these incidents that we deal with every day in our life's journey will actually initiate a process of not handling, the event. And it's when you look to deal with it with a problem in any other area, whether it's work, sport, we've heard from today, or foot. Like if you have a problem, you talk to a teammate or a coach. In sport, if you have a problem at work, you talk to a superior, or go to policy or process. But in our life's journey, we're expected to know everything, right? And men are not have never been comfortable due to a bunch of sociological reasons, not in recent days, in reaching out and bouncing some of those intimate challenges, whether it's because we don't feel we'll feel like we're being judged, or we're not adequate, or we're carrying in wounds from our inner children, whatever it is.
Yeah. John, I'm going to jump in. This is all rich stuff. We still haven't got to the point of what's mentoring men and how do you work with men?
Yeah, good. Thank you. So mentoring men is about providing a resource in an everyday, accessible, straightforward relationship way. So anyone who just feels like there are questions, those everyday relationships or everyday situations or challenges can be better handled by bouncing something off someone, right? Whether it's tapping into their wisdom or just tapping into their willingness to listen, just to get it out. So Mentoring Men provides that. We're an organisation that is is available to men of whatever culture, age, over the age of 18, situation. And we try to line up men who are willing to provide that ear, and men who are keen to seek some sort of relationship with someone who is willing to listen. We train our mentors, and we work with mentees. That's my job, to assess and to help classify and organise the matches. And then we just allow the mentor and mentee to get on with creating a relationship that supports each other.
Great. And this is it's a voluntary basis?
Mentors and mentees are voluntary. We have great relationships, like John. We have referring agencies. So we got a relationship with Catholic Care, Mission Australia, and some other organisations that are constantly encountering men with challenges, and they can refer. But also, we just gather people through partner organisations, or out off the social media or word of mouth. And and all the mentors are volunteer. We've got a unbelievably powerful group of men who have stepped up. Like John, we also have students who are interested in working in the space and honing some of their practical skills. And otherwise, basically, it's smell of an oily rag that keeps us going, and passion that fuels.
Yeah, and is there a typical structure to that mentoring relationship? I mean, do you have to commit to a couple of years? Is it once a week for 6 weeks? How does a mentoring relationship typically work for your organisation?
Yeah, great question. Mentor and mentee have a chance to confirm that they want to work with each other. So there's a bit of facilitating that relationship. Once they agree to go ahead, and all of the boxes are ticked in terms of, safe practice, they decide. So the minimum relationship, the minimum commitment for a mentor is 6 months. And that can be, we usually recommend a weekly chat or a fortnightly meeting. But, you know, the mentor and mentee will decide basically amongst themselves how they're supporting each other. It's fantastic to meet in person. But of course, you know, the virus has taught us some stuff about how effective online and, you know, sort of other forms of communication can also be.
Right. And are you mentoring yourself?
Yeah, I am. I am mentoring a fantastic young bloke, which is exciting. He's incredibly, you know, like here's the interesting thing. I have been a mentor in other with other programs for young people in schools and so on. So, and I've never engaged, never committed to a mentoring period with with someone without feeling like I've actually come out of it with more than I went in. Right. So every single, you know, the shared wisdom of that kind of relationship, even with young people. So, you know, you're working with a 14-year-old boy. At the end of it, I feel so grateful to have learned what he has taught me. Right. And so I think it is the greatest expression of a man's contribution to society. You know, the willingness to sit down and to share and to listen and to be vulnerable, express your own truths, and to learn what I encourage everyone to consider is how we go from all of the misunderstandings about what's real and what's authentic for us to a point where we can sit in unconditional positive regard with another person, particularly a man or a young men, and just have that experience. It's so, you know, expanding.
Great, fantastic, John. And so what I'm taking from that is as a mentor. Yes, it's voluntary. Yes, it's a help giving role, but you get growth and a whole wealth of personal experience and personal value out of it in the process.
Absolutely. Sometimes I feel guilty, you know, that I'm
Yeah, I can relate to that. I felt guilty all through coronavirus lockdown, being in central Queensland and being able to go to the beach every day in a holiday town which is free from tourists at the moment. So
well, I think you should be guilty about that. But anyway,
okay.
Yeah.
I'm in the right room to process that guilt. Obviously,
that's right. We'll walk you through it.
Yeah. Okay. So one man who would certainly have no problem in walking me through the processing of my coronavirus guilt and many other things beside is Aladdin Jones. Aladdin, would you like to introduce yourself to our audience and give us a sense of some of the work you're doing with men?
Certainly, Glenn. Firstly, it's great to be here. It's great to have this conversation, Glenn. So I'm based in the Yarra Valley, but I also work out of Melbourne itself. So anyone who doesn't know, Yarra Valley is about an hour and a half out of Melbourne. So beautiful country area. I also feel the joy of being able to walk in the countryside out here and get a lot of pleasure from that. I work as a psychotherapist. That's been my main training for the last nearly 20 years now, and family therapist. So I work one-on-one with men. I also work with couples. I work also with women. And I had spent about nearly a decade working with families, particularly boys of all ages, and whole family groups, particularly young people who have come out of family violence, trauma background, some gang violence in New Zealand. So, so quite a range of things, really. I wondered, Glenn, about just sharing a little brief story about how I actually came to do this work. I was just reflecting on what would be important to share in this. About nearly 20 years ago, I'd just finished about 5 months of a silent meditation retreat up in the Himalayas. And it was a big sort of time in my mid-20s. And I'd just come out from that on September the 11th, 2001. And in this little village I was in, there was all the shots of the planes flying into the buildings, and there was the sort of shock and the kind of like disbelief and all these different emotions of everyone around. And in that moment, I also had that shock and sort of like, wow, this is big, that's happening here. And I just had this one of those light bulb moments, I guess, which was like, I've got to dedicate, this is my life work. It's really clear to support boys and men, particularly, I guess, really essentially coming out of the potential of violence in all of us and into a more of a heartful, connected place. Yeah. And so really that sort of set out the last nearly 20 years of work in this area. And I feel every day even more passionate about it than when I started, and finding different avenues for it, whether it's working with dads, whether it's working with teenage boys or young boys, or whether it's working with older men. One of my real joys at the moment is put together this intergenerational dads group, sharing stories of fatherhood. And, we have from, a 20-year-old to an 85-year-old great-grandfather. And it's so beautiful to have intergenerational men together supporting a new dad in his first, building up to being a dad, to a great-grandfather. And that's also those transitions. And it's like, wow, that's feels like a missing piece in our culture, really, how to really support each other in each of these stages. So that's just one little local thing that I do as part of, I guess, I see community service. And then a big part of my work's in psychotherapy.
Great. Thanks so much for, I've just got that image of you on your meditation. Well, I did have the image of you on your meditation. And then you gave us that icon of 9/11. And that, of course, I don't know about the other guys, but that just transported me right back to where I was physically located at that time. It's one of those moments in our history when we can actually see and feel exactly where we were at that moment. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. That the world had changed. And whilst it wasn't a single symbol that I can think of with coronavirus, it's felt like this period has been similarly significant.
That's right. Yeah, it's curious you say that, because certainly I noticed in my actual therapeutic work with if we just focus on men, because I work with women too, but with men, that it feels like it's provided this opportunity to actually go in quite deep and look into what's actually not working in their life anymore, and it's actually been surprisingly really fulfilling, because there is this time of like, gosh, more in vulnerability, perhaps more time to feel into what's there. I think one of the things that a general blanket statement is a tricky thing sometimes, I think particularly for men, is how to sit with discomfort, whatever that is, and not react to it, how to sit with it and allow it to learn from that. To actually go, well, what does this actually teach me? And I think this COVID virus, it's certainly not easy for everyone, but that's the opportunity it provides.
Yeah, absolutely. It's I'm sure it would take a long time for us to actually fully unpack and understand the impact that this period of history has had on all of our lives. I know it's affected mine personally. Yeah. For me, it has been incredibly positive, and not just the sort of light-hearted thing about I can go to a great beach. Yeah. I've been able to live in a community where there is greater social connection actually at this time of lockdown, because we're all having a shared experience, and so there's this thing that's been unifying us and connecting us, and people who are just familiar faces in the street have become social connections and friends, because we've been able to have a starting point to talk about, which is how's it affected you, that's been the starting point of so many conversations, which then become richer, deeper relationships.
So that's really beautiful if it deepens those relationships. Conversely, just to put in there, the couples therapy and things I do around that, or men in separation, which has been a big theme as well over this time, is it's actually brought out aspects where there's been, violence or behaviours that haven't been very relational in that way. So I think that's another point that unfortunately has really, well, maybe fortunately or unfortunately, is bringing that out increasingly. Yes. And the men that have the courage to actually go, I need to change something that's not working here. you know, I've been very impressed by a number of men I'm working with who have done that, who have said, actually, this has got to change, and I've got to look at it, you know, and deal with it. So this is also the potential, but not everyone's up for that. And, you know, yeah, that's part of it too. We can't.
No, indeed. And so I think that's a really nice point for us to pivot into the next part of our conversation, because we've got a very real situation right now. We are living in this environment, and you're quite right. It's had negative as well as positive impact, quite clearly. And the ripple effects could go on for quite some time. And my area of concern is things like the impact that the potential economic downturn and the loss of financial security and work security is going to have on men in particular. We know from like the global financial crash in Europe, 2008 to 2012, there was a massive peak in male suicide, for example. And male suicide is often just the tip of an iceberg, which points to a whole host of other behaviors, whether that's drink or mental health issues or relational issues or whatever. And so there is a genuine risk and concern that here in Australia over the next sort of 6, 12, 24 months, that we're going to be picking up a lot of the pieces that we're not even yet quite aware what those pieces are, because the pieces haven't really fallen yet. There's kind of lots of things are up in the air. And the question I wanted to explore with you three was, you know, I started with the assumption that you work with men and you do a great job of working with the men that you work with. And so I'm interested in, you know, how can we have more, two questions. How can we have more men benefit from that type of work? But more importantly for this particular conversation is, how do we get men like the men you work with, how do we catch them earlier? And I think that's a really pertinent question if we're thinking about who are the guys that are going to be falling down and struggling in 6 months' time. How do we start to get to them now? So, and we don't have to have easy, simple answers. It's just something to explore and see where it takes us. And I think, John Morgan, I'll come back to you first, as we started with you, and just see where this conversation takes us.
Thank you. Yeah, I guess that's certainly, Glenn, from my point of view, that's the challenge. Is it's great to say let's go upstream, but I guess the motto that we came up with a few years ago for our program is, if it takes a village to raise a child, then it takes a community to support men at risk. And so for me, one of the things that has become really apparent over the last couple of years is that we can only do so much through social media and word of mouth and so forth, but we've really got to embed great partner relationships with primary health networks, therapists, psychologists, doctors, GPs, but also maybe the welfare officers in the footy clubs, and you know, embed ourselves in the universities where we've got populations of men. But I think the other thing, I look at my sister Marcus's mum, who Glenn Warwick the other day said when we were doing an advisory committee meeting, he said, you know, your sister has brought in probably half the men into that program in Bundaberg over the last couple of years. And that's because she's so closely networked with families. And so she'll be talking, and she's pretty astute, done all the SP sort of stuff, but also had her own loss and very sensitive to that too. And so she'll say, hey, how's such and such going? And oh, he's really struggling. You know, on the 29th of June, we've got our face-to-face, and John's coming up and he's cooking a barbecue, bacon and eggs just to connect. Do you want to just come along? And would that be something? So just, you know, I think around the edges, we need families to be able to identify that. We need communities. We need agencies, definitely. We need to have a lot of eyes, I think. And we need to look at, you know, because men internalise their distress. So we need to be able to look at the external changes in behaviour and say, okay, this is generally an indication that I'm not coping as well. And that's where I think we need to get into the conversations and the skills and the mentoring, because that's where it really counts. And I've, you know, at the moment, wearing a few different hats. You know, we've developed the resilience building workshops and the coaching and group supervision processes for our mentors. But at the moment, I'm area coordinator for the Sunshine Coast and mentoring a few men. And so I sort of think about the guys that I'm working with and just that close contact that we're having where we're checking in. And one of the greatest compliments I ever got, I ever received was a couple of weeks ago when I was speaking to a really traditional guy in a regional area. And when Glenn approached him because he needed some help, his boy had died by suicide and lots of other dynamics in the family. He said, "Oh, I'd like to work with John," because he was the facilitator for the session I was in. But one of the things about him is a really good-hearted guy, and it's all about that potential that you and Dave were talking about before, best in him, and it's really tuning into that and getting into that. And you know, the other day I was just reflecting and saying, oh, mate, you are just doing such great work. You know, you haven't had any of those, you know, rum binge nights, you know, where it sent you into a bit of a spiral. You're so helpful with mum and dad. You're getting them to appointments. You're doing lots of great stuff, taking your dad fishing, you know. Said it's just incredible what you're doing. You know, the meaning and purpose that you're achieving with this is important. And he said, "Oh, mate, you're brilliant. You get me like a brim at the baffle." and it's really nice. And I guess the reason it was a compliment, it was really lovely to think, oh, I've had that connection because I've had 20 years of crisis counselling. But I love this idea of going back a step and getting to, you know, to people and having these rich conversations and having that certainty. I love that comment about, you know, from Robert, you know, about uncertainty combined with mental complexity, you know, and sort of trying to simplify that a little bit for some of these guys and get them to focus on things that, like the Seligman stuff, that will generate, you know, positive emotions and generate engagement and generate, you know, positive relationships and, you know, give them meaning by serving someone or something outside themselves and feeling that they've achieved and accomplished stuff, you know. So just sort of trying to, I guess, certainly not giving them the model or whatever, but just saying, mate, you're just ticking lots of boxes and this is the best version of you. You're just kicking it. And that's really, really exciting when 3 months ago there was a lot of ideation and there was a lot of angst and the burden of losing a son, you know, to suicide was kept coming back. So it's just, but the hard part with that too is you've got to take it at the pace of the guy. And that's the thing, you know, if we can truly be centered on them and really see what their needs are and really try and establish deep-seated rapport with the person, then we've got to have faith that the rest will follow. So it's not about pushing too hard and too fast into that as well. That's taken a few months even to get to that point, I think.
Yeah. That's great, John. There's a load of rich stuff there that I'm sure we'll pick up some of those threads as we evolve through this conversation. Just want to point out that if you're watching this and wondering which one's Robert and which one's Dave, well, it's none of us. Reference back there to the previous hour talking men's mental health, where we had Robert Hart and Dave Burt talking, and John picks up a few gems of golden wisdom in the 5 minutes that you were in that conversation. So fantastic. So over to you, John Millam. Same kind of question. You know, think about the guys that are going to be really struggling in 6 months' time in your kind of wider community. How are we going to get in there earlier?
Yeah, so working with men one-on-one, right? You know, like whether it's relationships or whether it's say career or stress about finances or whatever. It always, those symptomatic. It comes back to they're trying to identify themselves, right? And to deal with, they don't trust their best expression. So, one of the things we can do is to role model. I think one of the really effective things we can do with one-on-one is to really role model, the characteristics of our own best expression, right? So we have courageous conversations in contexts where they're not usually seen. So when you work with men, you need to be changing the context of of wherever you are, right? So whether it's at the sporting club or at the pub or at a family barbecue or a friend's party, when you have those conversations, like I've been told, why do you, geez, you're hard to talk to. You go deep, John. And I go, it's go deep or go home, right? So, and I guess it's a little bit confronting, but it's also about just, it opens doors. You get people coming back to you and asking questions. So understanding that as a trailblazer, we get a chance to role model, say, a different approach to being vulnerable, to be authentic, to be okay with not knowing some stuff, but also being willing to ask the question, to be brave about asking the question of other people, and how we get out to the wider, how we reach men where this is happening, where it's first happening. For me, there's a little story. I have two mates. One was very fit. You wouldn't have expected. He was riding his bike, had chest pains, and in fact fell off and was having a heart attack. Now, interestingly, in that moment, right, people around him, so other fitness, I don't know what fitness fanatics, other people in the area were able to step up and offer CPR, right, and care, right. So the ambulance was called. He was stabilised. There were people who were saving his life right there on the path where he was riding. I had another mate who has left us through suicide, and he was part of the same groups as we both, as the other friend. And when he was in crisis that was leading to such a disastrous outcome, there was no one in those groups who knew how to administer some first aid, right? And for me, the difference between those two situations was was glaring. I go, how is it that someone can, everybody knows CPR and no one knows how to have a conversation that can save a life, right? Or even just, help a bloke find someone who can save a life, right? So I thought, we need to, through the power of both supporting men one-on-one and helping them with their individual challenges, also bring this into focus as an everyday activity wherever everyday men are doing everyday things. I don't know if that makes sense, but the idea is let's make it normal that, like everybody who knows CPR in Australia, let's make it okay that everyone can have an authentic conversation about how we're going in our mental well-being.
Got it?
Yeah.
That's great. Thanks, John. I really resonated that sort of opening doors piece. You were talking about changing the context wherever you were. And what was it you said? Go deep or go home?
Yeah.
And a part of me thought, oh God, you're going to be really annoying at a party, aren't you? When I want to have a giggle on a Friday night.
I have been told that, right? Can't you just talk about football, John? Right.
Yeah. But what you then went on to say was about it opens doors. What it's not about what happens in that one conversation. It's about providing permission to have those conversations at a later date.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And you're showing people the door's open, not just saying my door's always open. You're actually showing them the door's open.
Inviting them to walk through the door with you, right? And over time, I can see in certain environments, I cease to be unusual, and more men find the power of that experience, right? So it's going to be it's Malcolm Gladwell's tipping point, right? At some point we're going to find that men will change, right? Because it's in us. It's an innate thing. We go back to our elders, right? We used to learn from our elders, right? Things have changed in the modern society, but we know that that's the right thing. We were talking about Aladdin was talking about transitions, right? There used to be transitions, and we seek to find where transitions can be held now, and we sort of create the opportunity for transitions, but we're not very good at them. We don't make them purposeful, right? And I think you know, men who are working in this area are building purposeful transitions, and it's really making a difference. But it's a, you know, critical mass once we reach a certain point, and men see how that being their best expression is a really wonderful place to be. I just asked the young man the other day in a workshop. I just said, "How does it feel being nice? And is it better than being bad?" Right? Do you feel better? Right? You know, what happens when you're nice? You know, when you're, and particularly when you're unnecessarily nice. You know, like when you just do nice things, how do you feel? And universally, they respond, "I feel good." And I go, well, you know, if you have a pathway to feel good, maybe we should, you know, sort of exercise that a little bit.
Great. Thanks, John. We'll come back to you, I'm sure. But first, let's hear what Aladdin's got looking at this question.
Well, it's actually a question I realise that's been with me for many years. I mean, yes, you're referring to this period of kind of crisis, and often, well, potential crisis. Often it seems to be what brings about change for men, is they have to actually almost get to that place of in crisis where something actually can change. And the question about how to catch them earlier, that's the question I feel have been with me for quite a while about, you know, oh, we work with the boys, you know, the 5-10-year-old boys. Oh, we work with the teenage boys because, you know, they're the ones who are going to be stepping into, you know, becoming an adult and potentially a father. And then, oh, we work with the expectant dads because, you know, if we can really get in there and support them, then that will help healthy attachment and help the next generation. Oh, we work with the new dads, like on it goes, you know. And but so that's the bigger picture of that question to me. But the crisis bit, working, and referring to the next few months, I think the what it immediately brings to mind for me is about a question around resilience. And how does someone get through difficult stuff and someone doesn't? And the deeper underlying roots of that for people. For instance, you know, how do we feel about ourselves and our relationship with the world? So a couple examples there around, you know, do I experience the world as a safe place? You know, do I feel safe for myself? Do I have a sense of belonging? And being able to be myself. And a really big one I feel happens when I've facilitated groups of men in all sorts of settings comes down to worth. Like, do I actually feel worthy as a human being, as a man, or as a partner, or a dad, or a brother, or whatever? And that question there brings up vulnerability often, and to be able to be with that vulnerability. So. And the other piece it can bring up is particularly when there's job loss, when there's separations, when there's, you know, a disconnect relationship is a really tricky one of who am I? You know, that real age-old question there, who am I really? What's my identity? And that I think the more that we kind of stack up our identity that's based on, you know, status or particular ways of appearing in the world, you know, how we're seen, but what's our relationship with ourselves when we go home and when we're in those quiet spots or when we're with our partner. And so again, I would say, and there's an old saying about crisis supposedly translates in Chinese characters around opportunity. Yes, it is an opportunity, but it does not mean that it's easy by any means. And it also means having to address some of those underlying roots, I believe, around what is my relationship with myself and the world. You know, how do I learn actually how to feel safe enough or belong enough or worthy enough? And I think that's a potential of an everyday conversation too, to just provide a little bit of space for whoever we're with and support that. For a person, you know, I've just had a tradie here the other day and he just shared about a very good mentor person just died last night, you know, and he said, oh, I was happy to come here to do some of the tiling because I felt like I could come and just be a bit sad and get on with my work, but I felt okay with that, and just create a bit of space for him to actually share some of that vulnerability. I think it can happen anywhere, and we've all got a role to play in it, whether we're in the professional banner or not. There's a whole bunch of stuff in there.
Yeah, fantastic. So there's already a wealth of stuff there, and so much of it is about culture, and not, you're not talking on that level of, oh, we need a campaign on TV with AFL players telling everyone to change, and that'll change things. You're talking about community level and one-to-one sort of interrelational level change, where we provide space for each other, where we're connected to each other, where we're picking up what's going on.
Yeah,
with each other. You're really focusing on those. Is that you, John? John Morgan? I think John's just frozen. No, okay. Yeah, so I think there's definitely a sort of a common thread between what all of you are saying there. But I'm interested to, we've got about 10 more minutes to go around here. I wondered if each of you would come back and maybe reflect on one thing or two things that you've heard the others say, which sort of really resonate with you, that you'd like to bounce off. So I know, like John was talking about that, building those networks, lots of eyes in the community, building that community support around men at risk, and extending it out to building relationships with PHNs and GPs and welfare officers. And that was one piece that really resonated with me, John, from the last couple of weeks of all the different summits and things we've been doing. I've noticed really great work being done by primary health networks and clinicians and stuff like that, and really amazing work being done at a community level, but a big disconnect between the two, and that lack of broader network community that can pick up a bloke wherever he happens to be in a community, and feed him into whatever part of the system is needed for him right now, rather than just going, bloke needs to phone Lifeline, that's what he needs to do, which is that sort of simplistic, we'll rely on the top-down approach to resolve it. John Millman was talking about changing the context, about being a role model, about having courageous conversations. Everyone knows CPR, right? So why doesn't everyone know how to have that sort of deep and meaningful conversation with people? And Aladdin talking about providing space for people to build relationship with themselves, to actually sit with crisis, which is an opportunity, but is also quite deep, as it's a crisis, is deeply uncomfortable, and not all of us are ready and prepared to deal with that. So we need space, and we need opportunity to do that. So coming back to you first, John Morgan, what are you picking up from what the other blokes are saying that really sort of like you'd like to build on?
Oh yes, so much, I have to say. Loving it. So yeah, from my point of view, I thought that it's really great I really love the CPR versus the conversation to save. And I guess from my point of view too, that not thinking that you have to be all things to all people, but just that you've got some basic safety planning skills about asking some questions. And, my wife and I have both had that in recent times where people have kind of talked around it. And, we both said, so I ask, when people are talking about that, they often think of suicide. Have you had those thoughts? And just to be able to be a bit bold in going there with that, and then seeing about what's required, what's really helpful at this time for the person. I do love that idea too about, how does it feel, coming back to that, being, well, not so much the nice, but when you're being generous, and when you're going outside yourself, and you're being really meaningful and purposeful in what you do with others, how does that feel? And I think just tapping into that, I think, is really important. I love the stuff that Aladdin was saying too about working with different stages of men, and I guess that's always been the question for us. Is it 18 to 44 because that's the biggest cause of death, etc. And recently over COVID, we went, okay, we'll just cross out the young bit behind me, and we'll just make it men, because we've got some really great older people coming into the program too. So when you talked about working with different stages, I was thinking, it's really great that we've got And it's something that Jeff Lawrence said in one of your sessions, Glenn, the other day, that, we've got to make eldership an integral part of everything. And I think eldership is, people have gone through lots of crap, and that's the stuff that I think is really important, is coming back to the role modeling part, is sharing all of the really tough, difficult loss stories, but the meaning that comes out of it for you, but also something that came up in one of the forums, not being the bloody preacher, all you've got to do, 5 steps, start with this one, start with it, that sort of stuff, like really trying to tune into the need and really trying to connect with men at their level. So for me, that relates to the space thing, giving people space to be able to connect and establish rapport, and then have that long-term commitment, because our minimum is 12 months for a mentor. That's what we're asking them to give, and generally they catch up weekly. And what we really try and do with this program is not just match up temperament, but also match up interests. So, for me, that's that idea of, this Mark who I'm working with, who's a long way away, and I can't be there in person. He's 300 Ks away from me. So what I said to him the other day, I'd like to link you up with a good mentor up there that we've got, who's a bloody good fisherman, and I'd like him to go and take you fishing and have a chat to you. And I think that's really important. So, and it was a term, Glenn, again, that was the richness of the series that you've been running, that came up where one of the academics said shoulder to shoulder. And that's exactly the way we think about connecting with men, making the conversation not incidental, but making it an easy thing by doing something with the fella, kicking a footy, going for a surf, working out in the gym. And, I loved one. We had one example on the Gold Coast, if I just share this very briefly. Where the guy came in and said, I love to box. And goes, great, I'm a PT. What day do we want to box? So they've been doing that for 6 months, and it's been a fantastic relationship. A bit of exercise therapy at the same time.
Yeah, great. That's fantastic, John. So coming over to the other John, what are you picking up from these 2 awesome blokes?
Yeah, like John said, just so much, and I would like to sign up to both, getting therapy from both you guys and working on your program. So, but it's interesting because Marcus' mission, right? I love that. David Dieter talks about men needing a mission, right? And I love that idea that whatever we're doing, if we're doing it with purpose, the hard times aren't so hard. The difficult tasks aren't so difficult. The pain isn't so painful, it's because purpose is the fuel for a man's, progress through life. It doesn't make it any less complex or challenging, but it makes it possible. So I often talk to the guys about saying, celebrate every day, because you are you have successfully overcome every moment of difficulty to this point. Right, so you are literally the walking banner for your success, and that sounds corny. I guess that's part of why people don't want to talk to me at social functions. But it's inspiring when so Aladdin talks about helping men around worth. And what is your worth? It's not about being a footy star. It's not about having a massive, set of biceps. It's not about, our skills are myriad and our talents multitude. And understanding, taking a moment to share, to listen and be curious about another man, you will only have regard for their talents and skills, right? And that becomes such an inspiring place to work with men, right? Because you just go, wow, aren't we amazing, right? And then you have a mission to do more of that, right? So when we have that, when we help each other find our purpose and spend time connecting with all of the stages of life, to older men, which is particularly poignant for myself as I get into eldership stages. Work is wiping them out. If you're trying to find a job after 50 now, you're almost pulling off an impossible feat to get a job. you know, like young men, you know, you're not even part of the conversation in some ways. And yet, you know, spend time, go to a bowls club and talk to the amazing talents and skills and knowledge that is there. Just have a beer with them and you will be nothing but impressed and inspired, right? So let's find a way to connect, you know, intergenerationally, as Aladdin said. Let's create structures. Let's have conversations that reconnect us back to men with purpose, you know.
Okay. Right. Speaking of men with purpose, here's a man who clearly had a purpose when he was on his 5-month meditation retreat.
Oh man, how good's that?
Came out of that with another purpose. So what are you picking up, Aladdin, from these the two Johns?
Yeah, look, I'd just like to reflect back. John Millam, isn't it? John Millam. You know, the words that come to me just as I listen to you is infectious enthusiasm. And so it's probably more just reflecting back how there is an infectious quality. I feel it as you're sharing that, and that in itself inspires something. I can imagine how many people that similarly inspires just in that way. And John Morgan, you know, of just reflecting back there, my experience of your delight at connection, and that to me sounds like a big part of what's really at the heart or the importance of what you're up to there, and particularly the connection of wherever anyone's at. You know, that's really what I get from it. Really strong sense of, you know, whoever and wherever they're at, the important bit is connection and making that connection. And so, you know, that and an openness around that. So, you know, to me, what speaks so strongly is the passion and commitment that both of you have. And sometimes organizations, you know, they're like, you know, they have the banner of that, but it's, of course, they're empty in the sense of it depends who's actually there and doing the work, you know, and that's what really stands out for me, is both of your commitment and passion. And I'd like to include you in that too, Glenn, you know, having got to know you the last few years. And I think, like, how perfect that Glenn's doing this role. It just feels so fitting. And I just also want to acknowledge your, having sat in different settings with you, your commitment and passion for supporting men over so many years now, Glenn, is very inspirational. And the ease in which you turn up and do that, and in knowledgeable ways. So it's more of a real gratitude for all of you in what you're doing. It's great stuff.
Thanks, Aladdin, and thanks for the acknowledgement. And for me, it's easy because I think this resonates. Hopefully, this resonates with all of you in different ways. Is we were talking in the last session about Martin Seligman's sort of three types of you know, life you can have in terms of positive psychology: the good life, the pleasant life, and the meaningful life, and they all have value. But I found my purpose, and it's like I find my purpose and my meaning. I don't go to work every day. I just get up to fulfill my purpose, and that's why it's easy, because it's like, this is what a Glenn does, you know.
I can imagine we all can kind of relate to that. I get the feeling of that, and that's not a given, you know, for other men. And I really, I guess that would be kind of like a hope that men, other men, find their purpose, and because it brings more energy. It's more life enhancing.
Yeah. And I want to just acknowledge a bit of emotion that's rising up there in me, which is it's a double emotion. It's and am I freezing as I say this?
It's all right.
Yeah. So it's a double, it's like emotion of joy and gratitude, but it's also an emotion of sadness for all the years in my life where I didn't have that. There's that, you know, because I wasn't born with an awareness of purpose. Yeah. You know, I had spent many decades trying to work out where on earth I fitted into the world and society, and you know, and that's a struggle for a lot of blokes, I guess, is like, you know, sensing there's something more, but not knowing what the more is, and there's that challenge. So let's wrap up, because we've done an hour, but let's wrap up with I'll give you one tough question to finish off with, and try and keep it as short and snappy as you can. Is so if there's a bloke out there listening, and I'm not talking about like, you know, a bloke who's like on the edge of something really serious, but actually a bloke who is thinking, I think there's something more, but I'm not sure what it is. What one bit of advice? I mean, where to go or what to do? What might you suggest? And we'll do the same order. John Morgan first.
I was hoping I wouldn't be first. No, just kidding. A couple of things that sort of come to mind in terms of the guys. I think it's sort of flipping the role model a little bit to some degree, and the traditional values to some degree, and saying, okay, let's, you know, silent and stoic and self-reliant, great, really good qualities, but really just that whole idea that the greatest courage that you'll have is being inward looking and being able to sit with the discomfort and lean into it, and, you know, to know that that will pass and so forth. But to be able to do that in a safe environment with others is a really hard thing to do. But, you know, I just keep coming back to something that Zach Diedler said, you know, in one of the sessions, which is, you know, you're risk takers and I can't stop you from taking a risk. But I tell you what, I'm asking you to take a risk on life here, and to do that, to work with me. And I love that idea, you know, just trying to really just get people to say, you know, it's going to be tough and you're going to feel a bit vulnerable, and that's okay. We're going to make it easy for you, but you've got to put up your hand. There's got to be a bit of readiness there too.
Yeah. Great. Thanks, John. And John Millman?
Yeah. I couldn't agree more. I think that the opportunity to step up, right, is part of the purpose of being a bloke, right? So, and all of us have that responsibility to, you know, Aladdin talks about potential. All of us have the responsibility to honor our own potential as well as to see that potential in others. So I think it's a real opportunity to step up, and to do so practically. There are endless pathways to this, right? So I don't think there's one purpose. What I can tell you is, as wonderful as the clinical world is, and the therapy, the crisis world, these kind of conversations aren't really for those lifelines and men's lines and so on. Although they're wonderful, and please don't hesitate to use them when you feel you need to. But if you Google, Facebook men's groups, Google anything men's, mental health or whatever, and look through and just see organizations like Marcus Mission, like Men's Walk and Men's Table and Men Anchor, and particularly mentoring men, because I know we're desperately keen to hear from you. And the experience will be worthwhile, right? You will have an experience. So that's what I would recommend, mate.
Great, thanks, John. Aladdin?
Yeah, I'm reminded about the words of a good friend of mine who says something like, when we have something to offer, we really come alive. So it's in the same vein there, that when we feel like we can contribute. But what I see in the different settings that I work in, there's a desperate need for good quality training and facilitation, and stepping up to talking with teenage boys around pornography use, for instance, and just supporting it in our communities, that, supporting, there's so many sort of places, in the work of Tom Docking and Dad's Group Inc., that's a great place to just connect in around Dad's Group, or the work of Dave Burt with SALT and sport club stuff. Like there's endless possibilities here, but it's just that going, oh, I feel worthy enough. I've got something to offer. I may not know exactly what it is, but I'm going to start thinking, feeling into that. We need this sort of stepping up as well. Whether we feel like we've got it all together or not, doesn't matter. It's just in that very act of offering, something will happen.
Yeah,
that's brilliant. I mean, and mine would build on that. Mine is go and help another bloke. And that can take any form. It can be helping a mate with something, or it can be going and volunteering. And should you help women and children? Of course you should. Should you help people of all genders and all gender identities? Of course you should. But have a place in your life that's about helping other blokes, because there's something unique in that you won't fully understand until you really step into it, is the word we've used. Whether that's given to a small charity working with men, whether it's going and volunteering at a men's shed. But yeah, Google all that stuff. Go and help another bloke, because you'll get something out of it. And it's more than you expect.
Yeah.
Awesome. This has been our first ever episode of Blokes on the Couch. They didn't bring a couch, but they brought their hearts and their wisdom and their experience. I've loved this conversation, can I say? I'm not just saying that because I have to. I've really loved the conversation. And I've got to go and have another one in about 25 minutes. So I'm going to say thank you very much to John Morgan of Marcus Mission, to John Millen of Mentoring Men, and Aladdin of the longest list of projects you've ever seen.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thanks, fellas. Great to work with you.
Take care. You've been watching Men's Health TV. Tune in again tomorrow, 12 noon or 5 p.m. tonight for the Men's Circles meetup. See you later.
Cheers.
Thanks, Glenn.